We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. What if I told you that most men don't struggle with women because they lack looks, money, or status, but because they misunderstand female psychology? What if the frustration, mixed signals, and sudden loss of attraction you've experienced had less to do with who you are and more to do with how you show up emotionally, mentally, and energetically? In today's world, men are taught to chase, explain, overgive, and seek validation. Yet Stoic men throughout history did the opposite and earned deep respect effortlessly. Women don't respond to words as much as they respond to behavior, presence, and self-mastery. And once you understand that, everything changes. This video will break down 10 powerful female behaviors every Stoic man must understand, not to manipulate, but to move with clarity, strength, and calm authority. These are patterns rooted in psychology, attraction, and timeless masculine principles that most men never learn. If you've ever wondered why silence is sometimes more powerful than effort, why emotional control creates attraction, or why detachment increases respect, this video is for you. Watch till the very end, because the final insight ties everything together and can completely shift how women perceive you, from overlooked to undeniable. Number 1. Emotional self-control over reactive validation. One of the most overlooked strengths you can build is emotional self-control, especially in a world that constantly tempts you to react for validation. You feel it in small moments, the urge to explain yourself, to prove your worth, to be seen a certain way, to get an emotional return from someone else's response. And if you're honest, you know how quickly a reaction can slip out before you've even chosen it. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress emotion or pretend you don't feel. It asks you to govern yourself. Wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That sentence alone can change how you move through attraction, tension, and uncertainty. Emotional self-control is not coldness. It is mastery. Reactive validation pulls you outward. It makes your inner state dependent on what you receive instead of what you decide. When you seek validation, you're saying, without words, that your emotional balance lives outside of you. Epictetus warned against this exact trap. If you seek tranquility, do less. Or rather, do what is essential. And what is essential here is choosing response over reflex. The moment you react to gain reassurance, approval, or emotional certainty, you hand over your power. Not dramatically, quietly, almost politely, but power given away is still power lost. You don't need to become emotionally distant to become emotionally strong. Strength shows up as pause, as space, as restraint. It's the difference between feeling something and letting that feeling steer you. Stoicism teaches you that emotions arrive uninvited, but actions are chosen. Seneca put it simply, the greatest power is to be master of yourself. When you stop reacting for validation, you stop leaking energy. You become harder to manipulate, harder to rush, harder to pull off center. And that steadiness is deeply felt, even when nothing is said. A reactive man is predictable. His mood rises and falls based on signals, responses, tone, attention. A self-controlled man is grounded. His emotional state has weight. It doesn't chase, it doesn't demand. It doesn't hurry to fill silence or discomfort. You don't need to perform calmness, you practice it. Reminded himself, be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. That is emotional self-control in motion. You still feel the waves, you simply don't collapse under them. Here, where you shift from understanding to embodiment, start by catching the moment before reaction. That split second matters more than you think. When you feel the impulse to respond quickly, to clarify, to seek reassurance, to adjust yourself emotionally, pause. Take one slow breath. Ask yourself a single question. Am I responding from intention or reacting for validation? That question alone creates distance. and distance creates choice. Stoicism lives in that gap. You also need to retrain your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty. Reactive validation often comes from discomfort with not knowing how you're perceived. The Stoics intentionally practiced uncertainty to reduce dependence on externals. Seneca encouraged voluntary discomfort for this reason, not as punishment, but as preparation. Your exercise here is simple and challenging. Allow emotional ambiguity to exist without resolving it. Don't rush clarity. Don't rush reassurance. Let the feeling pass on its own. It always does. This builds emotional endurance. You stop panicking internally when control is absent. Another practice is journaling, but not in a sentimental way. At the end of the day, write down moments where you felt pulled to react emotionally. Don't judge them, just note them. Then write what a controlled response would have looked like, not in words, but in state, calm, grounded, unrushed. Over time, your awareness sharpens, and awareness is the beginning of discipline. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom here means freedom from emotional compulsion. There's also a deeper shift that happens when you stop seeking validation. You stop negotiating your self-worth in real time. You don't need emotional returns to feel stable. Your presence becomes less needy and more complete. You're no longer trying to extract something from the moment. You're simply in it. And that changes how you're felt. Not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you're no longer internally bargaining. You may notice resistance at first. The ego doesn't like losing its shortcuts. Reacting is easier than regulating. Validation feels faster than self-trust. But Stoicism is built for the long game. Wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Emotional self-control isn't something you announce or explain. It's something you practice quietly, repeatedly, especially when no one rewards you for it. Here's another exercise. Define your emotional standards. Not how you want to feel, but how you choose to behave when emotions rise. Write down 3 rules for yourself. For example, I do not respond immediately when emotionally charged. I do not explain myself to relieve discomfort. I let feelings peak and pass before acting. These are not restrictions, they are anchors. When you feel pulled off center, return to them. Structure creates freedom. Over time, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop being emotionally loud. Your silence gains gravity. Your responses slow down. You stop chasing emotional certainty and start trusting your inner order. And this trust shows. Seneca said, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." In this context, dying means letting go of the need to be validated instantly. When that need dissolves, so does emotional slavery. This is not about winning interactions. It's about winning yourself back. Emotional self-control over reactive validation is the difference between being led by impulse and being guided by principle. And principles don't fluctuate. They don't panic. They don't beg. They endure. So commit to this. Not perfectly, not theatrically, just consistently. Pause more than you speak. Feel without obeying. Choose your state before you choose your response. The world will keep pulling, that's guaranteed. Your work is to remain unmoved inside while moving deliberately outside. That is Stoic masculinity. Quiet, composed, unshakable. Number 2, calm confidence without seeking approval. Calm confidence without seeking approval is not something you perform. It's something you settle into. You don't announce it. You don't prove it. You don't defend it. You simply occupy yourself fully, and that fullness changes how you move, how you speak, how you pause. Stoicism has always pointed toward this state, not as a tactic, but as a way of being. Wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Calm confidence begins exactly there. The moment you stop asking how you are perceived and start asking whether you are aligned, your energy shifts. You're no longer scanning for approval. You're grounded, and grounding is felt before it is understood. You feel the difference internally first. When you are calm without seeking approval, your nervous system isn't constantly negotiating with the world. You're not bracing for reactions. You're not adjusting your tone mid-thought. You're not silently hopping your presence is enough. It already is. Epictetus said, if you seek tranquility, do less. Less explaining, less proving, less chasing the nod, the smile, the signal that you're doing it right. Calm confidence is quiet because it has nothing to sell. It doesn't rush. It doesn't lean forward emotionally. It allows things to unfold without trying to control the outcome. Approval seeking, on the other hand, always leaks urgency. Even when it's subtle, it carries a faint tension, a neediness that isn't verbal but energetic. Stoicism teaches you to reverse that pattern by shifting authority inward. No man is free who is not master of himself, Epictetus reminded. When you master your reactions, when you stop outsourcing your self-worth, confidence stops being something you try to generate and becomes something you inhabit. This is why calm confidence is so powerful. It isn't reactive. It doesn't spike and crash. It stays steady regardless of response. To live this, you must make peace with not being validated immediately or at all. That doesn't mean you reject connection. It means you no longer hinge your state of mind on it. Advised, I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. Read that slowly. Calm confidence is the decision to reverse that imbalance, to respect your own judgment first, to trust your inner standard more than the room's reaction. This doesn't require arrogance or detachment. In fact, the more you seek approval, the less present you are. Calm confidence brings presence back. You listen better. You speak more deliberately. You allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it. Silence, when you are grounded, becomes a statement instead of a void. Seneca wrote, "He who knows how to be content will never be dissatisfied." Contentment is the soil where calm confidence grows. When you are internally satisfied with who you are becoming, you no longer reach outward for reassurance. Here is a practical shift you can make immediately. Start noticing when your impulse is to perform instead of to express. Performance is driven by anticipation. Expression is driven by clarity. When you catch yourself anticipating how something will land, pause, take a breath, return to intention, ask yourself, is this aligned with who I choose to be, or am I trying to manage perception? That single question pulls you back into your body, back into authority. Over time, this pause becomes natural. You stop reacting automatically. You choose deliberately. Another Stoic practice that strengthens calm confidence is negative visualization, but applied inward. Imagine approval being absent. Imagine neutrality. Imagine silence. And then ask yourself if you can still remain composed, respectful, and self-directed. This isn't about expecting rejection. It's about realizing you don't need applause to remain steady. Seneca often encouraged rehearsing adversity so that it loses its power. When you rehearse not being approved of and remain calm, you remove fear from the equation. Calm confidence thrives where fear has been disarmed. There is also a physical component to this. Calm confidence lives in your posture, your breathing, your packing. Stoicism is embodied philosophy. Practice slowing down intentionally. Slower movements, fewer gestures, controlled breath, not as an act but as discipline. When the body is regulated, the mind follows. Wrote, keep yourself simple, good, pure, serious, unpretentious. Simplicity in movement mirrors simplicity in intention. You don't need excess when you are anchored. One of the most powerful exercises you can adopt is this. For 1 week, remove the habit of self-justification. Notice how often you explain yourself unnecessarily. Notice how often you soften a statement to be liked. Practice stating things once calmly and stopping there. This isn't about being rigid. It's about trusting that your words don't need padding. You will feel discomfort at first. That's the withdrawal from approval dependence. Stay with it. Epictetus would call this training your faculty of choice. Each moment you resist the urge to over-explain, you strengthen inner authority. Calm confidence also means allowing others to have their reactions without managing them. You are not responsible for emotional outcomes, only for ethical action. This distinction is pure stoicism. Do what is yours to do, the rest does not concern you, as continually reminded himself. When you internalize this, you stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours. And when you put that weight down, your presence lightens, steadies, deepens. Over time, this way of being rewires how you experience yourself. You stop feeling like you're auditioning. You stop needing to be chosen to feel whole. You begin to experience confidence as calm rather than excitement, as depth rather than display. And that calm is not passive. It's potent. It communicates self-trust. It signals emotional self-sufficiency. It says, without words, I am already at home within myself. Make this your daily commitment, to act from alignment, not approval, to respond rather than react, to value your own judgment before external noise. Write it down each morning. Revisit it when you feel the old urge to lean forward emotionally. This is Stoic masculinity in practice, not hardened, not distant, but grounded and unshakable. As Seneca said, stand firm. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Calm confidence is the moment you stop rattling them. Number 3, purpose-first mindset over people-pleasing. One of the most powerful shifts you can make, especially as a stoic-minded man, is moving from a people-pleasing mindset to a purpose-first way of living. This isn't about becoming distant or indifferent. It's about reclaiming authorship over your inner world. When purpose comes first, your actions are rooted. When people-pleasing comes first, your actions are reactive. You feel the difference immediately. One feels solid, quiet, grounded. The other feels busy, anxious, slightly off balance. Wrote, if you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential. Purpose clarifies what is essential. People-pleasing clouds it. You often don't notice when you've slipped into people-pleasing because it disguises itself as kindness, flexibility, or emotional intelligence. But look closer. There's usually an unspoken hope attached to it, a desire to be liked, to be chosen, to avoid friction, and that hope slowly replaces direction. You start adjusting yourself not based on what you believe is right, but on how you think you'll be perceived. The Stoics were ruthless about this kind of self-betrayal. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, stop outsourcing your sense of worth. Purpose demands that you're willing to be misunderstood. A purpose-first mindset changes how you show up at a fundamental level. You're no longer scanning for approval. You're checking alignment. You ask yourself, is this consistent with who I've decided to be? Not, will this be received well? That single shift removes enormous psychological noise. You stop negotiating your boundaries internally. You stop trying to manage emotions that aren't yours to manage. Seneca said, a man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. People-pleasing is premature suffering. Purpose eliminates that excess. There's a calm authority that comes from knowing your direction. Not loud, not performative, just steady. When purpose leads, your words slow down, your decisions become cleaner. You don't rush to fill silence or smooth discomfort. You allow things to unfold without chasing control. And this isn't accidental. It's the result of internal order. Reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. A purpose-first mindset lets you leave moments untouched, instead of constantly interfering for reassurance. People-pleasing fragments you. One version of you here, another version there. Purpose integrates you. It gives you a center of gravity. Without it, you end up adapting so much that you forget what you were adapting from. And when you're intelligent, this is even more dangerous. You can justify anything. You can rationalize the erosion of your standards as maturity or empathy. But Stoicism cuts through that fog. It asks one hard question again and again. Is this within your control, and is this in accordance with your values? If not, let it go. Here's a practice to ground this shift. At the start of your day, before external demands rush in, define one non-negotiable principle for how you will act. Not an outcome, a way of being. Something like, today I respond deliberately, not reflexively, or today I don't trade self-respect for harmony. Write it, read it, carry it mentally. When the urge to please arises, pause and measure your response against that principle. This pause is where freedom lives. Epictetus said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power. Protect that space. Another exercise is to practice deliberate restraint. Not coldness, restraint. Allow yourself to not immediately respond, to not clarify, to not soften your stance. Let your actions stand on their own. Notice how uncomfortable that feels at first. That discomfort is withdrawal. You're breaking a habit of dependency. Seneca encouraged voluntary discomfort for this reason, to remind yourself that you can endure far more than you think without external validation. Purpose-first living also means redefining connection. Connection doesn't require self-erasure. Real connection respects boundaries, direction, and individuality. When you stop people-pleasing, you don't lose connection, you lose noise. You gain clarity. You show up as a complete person, not an adjustable version. Wrote, stand straight or be held straight. Purpose helps you stand straight on your own. Over time, something subtle but profound happens. You feel less urgency, less need to prove, less need to manage impressions. You start trusting your internal compass again. And when that trust is restored, your presence changes. Not because you're trying to be attractive or dominant, but because you're no longer divided internally. Seneca said, wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. Purpose first doesn't eliminate kindness, it purifies it. Your kindness becomes a choice, not a strategy. So take this seriously but gently. You don't need to reject people, you need to stop abandoning yourself. Purpose is not rigidity, it's coherence. It's knowing what you stand for when no one is watching and acting from that place when everyone is. Start small, pause more, choose alignment over applause. Each time you do, you reinforce the identity of a man who is led from within. And that, the Stoics would tell you, is real strength. Number 4, strong boundaries with quiet enforcement. Strong boundaries with quiet enforcement aren't about control, dominance, or making a point. They're about self-respect made visible without noise. Most men misunderstand boundaries because they think boundaries are words. They aren't. Words are optional. Boundaries are decisions you've already made internally, long before they're ever tested. When you truly have them, you don't announce them, explain them, or defend them. You live them. And that calm consistency is what gives them weight. Epictetus said it best. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. When your boundaries are real, they don't need speeches. They speak through your behavior, your pace, your willingness to walk away from what violates your inner order. Quiet enforcement begins inside you. It starts the moment you decide what you will and will not tolerate, not based on fear of loss, but based on alignment with your values. A Stoic man does not ask permission to respect himself. He doesn't wait for understanding or agreement. Wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That applies to your boundaries as well. If something violates your sense of right order, you don't debate it internally. You don't negotiate with your instincts. You honor them. And the more you honor them, the less often they need to be tested. You'll notice something subtle when your boundaries are solid. You stop overreacting. You stop trying to correct, convince, or control. You don't rush to fix behavior that crosses a line. You simply adjust your presence. Your energy shifts. Your availability changes. Your engagement recalibrates. This is quiet enforcement. No drama. No emotional spike. No explanation tour. Seneca warned, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." Loud enforcement is suffering before it's necessary. Quiet enforcement is confidence in your own standards. The reason this matters so deeply in relationships is because boundaries create emotional safety, not by pleasing but by being predictable in principle. When your reactions are grounded instead of reactive, your presence becomes steady. You're no longer pulled into emotional turbulence. You don't punish, you don't chase, you don't withdraw in anger, you simply remain aligned. That alignment is what people feel as strength, not force, not intimidation, strength. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Boundaries are self-mastery in motion. Here, where you need to be honest with yourself. Weak boundaries don't come from kindness, they come from fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing connection. But Stoicism teaches you that anything maintained through self-betrayal is already lost. Reminded himself, is this necessary? Ask that question when you feel the urge to over-explain your boundary. Is it necessary to justify your standards, or is it enough to live them? The more you answer honestly, the quieter your enforcement becomes. To build this skill deliberately, you need practice, not theory. Start with this exercise. Define 3 non-negotiables for your inner life, not rules for others, rules for yourself. Things like how you respond under pressure, how you treat your time, how you engage emotionally. Write them down, then commit to enforcing them through action alone. No announcements, no warnings, just alignment. This trains your nervous system to trust your decisions instead of second-guessing them. Another Stoic practice is negative visualization, not to invite pessimism, but to remove fear. Seneca encouraged imagining loss to reduce its power over you. Visualize what happens if a boundary costs you approval. Sit with it. Notice that you remain intact. That exercise loosens the grip of fear and strengthens your resolve. When you are no longer afraid of losing what violates your values, enforcement becomes effortless. Quiet enforcement also means resisting the temptation to win interactions. You don't need to prove that you're right. You don't need the last word. You don't need validation for your stance. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In modern terms, that means you don't mirror chaos with chaos. You remain steady. You don't escalate. You simply don't participate in what dishonors your standards. Over time, something powerful happens. Your boundaries start working before you even speak. People sense where you stand because you stand there consistently. There's no confusion, no mixed signals, no emotional bargaining, and that clarity creates respect without demand. Respect that has to be demanded is not respect, it's compliance. Stoicism aims higher than that. It aims for inner authority, authority that doesn't shout. You'll also notice how much lighter you feel. Boundaries remove resentment. Resentment is what builds when you say yes while meaning no. When you quietly enforce your limits, resentment has no place to grow. Seneca warned, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Strong boundaries prevent anger by stopping self-betrayal at the source. This is your daily work, not perfection but consistency. Each time you honor your boundary without drama, you reinforce your self-respect. Each time you resist explaining yourself unnecessarily, you reclaim energy. Each time you choose alignment over approval, you grow calmer, more grounded, more sovereign. So take this seriously but softly. You don't need to harden yourself. You need to root yourself. Strong boundaries with quiet enforcement are not about pushing others away. They're about standing firmly in who you are so nothing external can pull you off center. As wrote, be like the rock against which the waves continually break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Be that rock, quiet, steady, unmoved. Number 5, comfort with silent and emotional space. One of the most quietly powerful qualities you can cultivate is comfort with silence and emotional space. Not the awkward kind you rush to fill, not the tense kind you apologize for, but the grounded, intentional stillness that says you are not afraid of your own presence. Most men misunderstand silence. They treat it like a problem to solve, a gap to close, a signal that something is wrong. Stoicism teaches you the opposite. Silence is not absence, it is structure. It is proof that you are not ruled by impulse. Epictetus put it simply, nature has given us one tongue and two ears so that we may hear twice as much as we speak. When you're at ease with silence, you stop leaking energy. You stop performing. You allow depth to form without forcing it. You feel the pull to talk when uncertainty appears. You feel it in your chest, that slight urgency to explain yourself, to clarify, to keep things moving. But that urge is rarely about connection. It's about control. It's about soothing your own discomfort. When you learn to sit with silence, you learn to sit with yourself. Wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Silence is that retreat made visible. It shows that you trust your inner stability more than external noise. That trust changes how you move, how you listen, how you are perceived. Emotional space works the same way. You don't crowd feelings, you don't rush responses, you don't demand immediate clarity or resolution. You allow emotions to exist without trying to manage them. This is not indifference, it's restraint. Seneca warned against emotional excess, saying, "He who is angry at a fault mends not the fault." Emotional space gives room for understanding instead of reaction. When you don't chase emotional intensity, you create safety without trying to. You show that you are not overwhelmed by what arises. That steadiness is rare, and rarity carries weight. What most men don't realize is that silence communicates far more than words ever could. It communicates self-trust. It communicates patience. It communicates that your worth does not depend on filling the air. When you rush to speak, you're often trying to prove something. When you're comfortable not speaking, you are being something. The Stoics valued this deeply. They believed mastery of the self begins with mastery of impulse, and speech is impulse's favorite escape route. Epictetus advised, "Let silence be your general rule. Say only what is necessary and in few words." Not because words are dangerous, but because unnecessary words reveal unnecessary need. To build this comfort, you have to stop treating silence as a threat. Start seeing it as training. Here is a simple exercise. Throughout your day, notice every moment where you feel the urge to speak just to relieve tension. Pause instead. Breathe once. Let the moment stand. You are not withdrawing. You are choosing. Over time, this pause becomes natural. Your nervous system learns that nothing bad happens when you don't rush. This is how emotional maturity is built, quietly, internally, without applause. Another practice is intentional non-reaction. When something stirs emotion in you, do not label it immediately. Do not express it immediately. Sit with it. The Stoics called this examining impressions, reminded himself daily, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Emotional space allows impressions to settle before they harden into reactions. You become less predictable, not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer automatic. Silence also sharpens your listening. When you stop preparing your next sentence, you start hearing what is actually being said and what is. This is where understanding deepens, not through analysis, but through presence. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Learning to live includes learning when not to speak, when not to respond, when to let a moment breathe. Silence teaches patience. Emotional space teaches trust. You may fear that silence makes you invisible or disconnected. The opposite is true. Silence gives your words gravity. Emotional space gives your responses precision. When you do speak, it's not noise, it's intention. You are no longer trying to manage outcomes. You are simply aligned with yourself. That alignment is felt, even when nothing is said. Here is another exercise to anchor this habit. Choose one daily interaction where you consciously speak less than you normally would, not in a withdrawn way, but in a deliberate one. Let pauses exist. Let your body remain relaxed. Notice how often meaning fills the space without your help. This is not a trick. It is discipline. Stoicism is built on discipline of attention, discipline of response, discipline of desire. Ultimately, comfort with silence and emotional space is comfort with uncertainty. And uncertainty is where most people panic. You don't, you stay, you observe, you allow. That calm is not passive, it is controlled, it is chosen. Captured this inner posture when he wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." Silence is that headland. Emotional space is that firmness. So stop rushing, stop filling, stop proving. Practice stillness until it feels natural. Practice emotional restraint until it feels empowering. You don't need to dominate the moment. You need to be grounded in it. When you are, everything else adjusts around you. Number 6, non-attachment to outcomes or attention. One of the most misunderstood strengths you can develop is non-attachment to outcomes or attention. It sounds passive at first, almost like withdrawal, but it's the opposite. This is not about indifference, it's about freedom. When you stop tying your inner state to how things turn out or how much attention you receive, something in you settles. You move differently. You speak without needing to be received a certain way. You listen without waiting to be rewarded. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "Seek not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." Smoothly doesn't mean effortlessly. It means without inner friction, without that constant background noise of hopping, fearing, calculating. You felt that noise before, the mental checking, the subtle leaning forward emotionally, the quiet urge to be noticed, to be chosen, to be affirmed. Even when you don't act on it, it's there. And the moment your peace depends on attention or outcomes, you give away leverage, not social leverage, inner leverage. You start reacting instead of choosing. You begin adjusting your energy, your words, your timing, all in service of a result you don't control. Warned against this when he wrote, "You disturb yourself by caring too much." That disturbance is not dramatic, it's subtle, it's the loss of stillness. Non-attachment is not emotional numbness, it's emotional discipline. It's the decision to invest effort without demanding a specific return, to show up fully without gripping the outcome. This is powerful because most people are transparent in their attachment. Their mood shifts based on attention. Their confidence rises and falls with response. When you are non-attached, your state becomes harder to influence. You stop signaling need. You stop broadcasting expectation. An expectation, whether you realize it or not, is pressure. People feel it. Energy always communicates before words do. The Stoics never asked you to stop wanting. They asked you to stop clinging. Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Attachment is suffering in advance. You rehearse disappointment. You preload anxiety. You turn possibility into a test of your worth. Non-attachment cuts that loop. You act because action aligns with who you are, not because you're trying to secure a reaction. That difference changes how your presence lands. Here, where this becomes practical, start by separating effort from expectation. You can care deeply about how you act while caring very little about how it's received. That's a skill. It takes practice. Each time you do something aligned with your values, pause afterward and consciously release the outcome. Say it internally if you need to. "I did my part. The rest is not mine." This echoes Epictetus' core teaching. Some things are up to you and some things are not. Confusing the two is the source of anxiety. Clarity between them is the source of calm. Another habit to build is attention fasting. Notice how often you check mentally for response, recognition, or validation. Not just externally, but internally. That subtle self-scan. When you catch it, don't suppress it, just don't feed it. Let the urge pass without acting on it. This is Stoic training in real time. Reminded himself, you can leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. When you remember how temporary attention is, you stop chasing it like it's permanent currency. Non-attachment also sharpens your masculinity in a quiet way. When you are not outcome dependent, you stop rushing. You stop forcing momentum. You allow things to unfold at their natural pace. There is confidence in patience. There is authority in not needing to push. This doesn't make you distant, it makes you grounded. You become present instead of performative. Seneca observed, the greatest power is to be master of oneself. Mastery here means not being yanked around by invisible strings of hope and fear. Try this exercise regularly. Before entering any interaction or situation where attention or outcomes matter to you, define your intention instead of your desired result. An intention is internal. A result is external. You might say, my intention is to be clear, calm, and honest. That's it. Nothing about how it should go. Nothing about what should happen next. Then hold yourself accountable only to that intention. This trains your nervous system to associate satisfaction with integrity, not reward. Another practice is negative visualization, a classic Stoic tool. Briefly imagine the outcome not going your way, not to scare yourself but to neutralize fear. When you see that you would still be intact, still dignified, still yourself, attachment loosens. Seneca used this deliberately, reminding himself that loss only hurts when you pretend it's impossible. Once you accept uncertainty, it loses its grip. Over time, non-attachment changes your internal rhythm. You become less reactive. Your emotions last shorter. Your thoughts don't spiral as easily. You stop replaying moments, dissecting signals, or assigning meaning where none is required. You conserve energy, and that energy returns as clarity. You know when to act and when to step back, not because you're calculating, but because you're listening inwardly instead of scanning outwardly. This is where stoicism and masculinity meet cleanly. Strength is not control over others, it's control over your own responses. When attention comes, you receive it without inflating. When it doesn't, you don't deflate. You remain even. Called this being like a rock against which the waves keep crashing. Not unmoved because you're numb, but unmoved because you're rooted. So take this seriously but gently. Non-attachment is not something you force. It's something you practice daily through small acts of release. Let go sooner, expect less, act fully, judge yourself by your alignment, not by applause. When you do this consistently, you'll notice something subtle but profound. You'll feel lighter, clearer, more solid. And from that place, everything you do carries more weight, because it's no longer asking for anything in return. Number 7. Consistent actions over verbal promises. One of the most overlooked truths you need to internalize is this: words are light, actions are heavy. You can say almost anything, promise almost anything, explain almost anything, but only what you consistently do carries weight. Stoicism has always emphasized this distinction. Didn't tell himself to talk about virtue, he reminded himself to be it. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That line alone dismantles the illusion that intention or expression is enough. When your actions repeat themselves calmly and predictably, they communicate something far deeper than speech ever could. And when it comes to attraction, trust, and respect, consistency is the language that's always understood. You live in a world that rewards talking, announcing goals, declaring values, explaining intentions, but psychology doesn't respond to declarations, it responds to patterns. The mind looks for alignment, it scans for reliability. It asks quietly, does this person do what he says even when it's inconvenient? Stoicism teaches you to shift your focus away from being believed and toward being dependable. Epictetus was blunt about this. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. When your behavior stays steady regardless of mood, pressure, or outcome, it sends a signal of inner order. And inner order is rare. The mistake many men make is assuming that clarity of speech equals clarity of character. It doesn't. Words can be rehearsed. Actions cannot be faked for long. Consistency requires discipline, and discipline requires self-command. That's why Stoics valued it so deeply. A man who acts the same way in private as he does in public doesn't need to convince anyone of his strength. His rhythm does the work for him. You don't need to promise stability when you are stable. You don't need to promise respect when your behavior already shows restraint, boundaries, and self-control. What you must understand is that inconsistency creates cognitive friction. Even when your words sound good, uneven behavior creates uncertainty. And uncertainty erodes trust faster than silence ever could. Warned, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Extend that idea outward. The things you repeatedly do determine the quality of your presence. If your actions fluctuate based on emotion, desire, or external response, your presence becomes noisy. Stoicism invites you to simplify. Fewer explanations, fewer promises, more repetition of grounded behavior. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or robotic. It means becoming reliable. Consistency is not intensity, it's calm repetition, showing up the same way, responding instead of reacting, choosing principle over impulse. Seneca wrote, "Time discovers truth." Over time, consistent action reveals who you really are, whether you like it or not. That's why the Stoic path asks you to focus on what's within your control, your choices, your habits, your standards. Not how you're perceived in the moment, but who you prove yourself to be over time. If you want to live this instead of just agreeing with it, you need to train it. Start with a simple practice. Reduce your verbal commitments by half. Notice how often you feel the urge to promise, reassure, or explain. Pause. Ask yourself whether a quiet action could communicate the same thing more honestly. This builds restraint. Restraint builds credibility. Another exercise is to choose one small, repeatable behavior that aligns with your values and perform it daily without announcing it to anyone. No witnesses, no validation, just repetition. This is pure Stoic training. As Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Let your actions mature in silence. You should also practice delaying speech. When emotions rise, resist the reflex to talk your way into safety. Stoicism teaches that emotional control is not suppression but timing. Reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Silence paired with consistent action creates a sense of groundedness that words cannot replicate. Over time, people stop listening to what you say and start watching what you do, and that's when your influence deepens. Consistency also protects your self-respect. Every empty promise chips away at your internal trust. You begin to doubt yourself. You start compensating with more words. It becomes a loop. Breaking it restores alignment. Seneca warned, be careful how you live. Don't waste your time on what doesn't make you better. Each consistent action, no matter how small, is a vote for the man you're becoming. You don't need dramatic gestures. You need clean habits. The paradox is that when you stop promising, you become more trustworthy. When you stop explaining, you become clearer. When you stop trying to be convincing, you become believable. This is not strategy, it's integrity. Stoicism strips life down to essentials. What you control, what you practice, what you repeat. Everything else is noise. So take this as a challenge. For the next week, say less, commit internally, act externally. Let your behavior do the speaking. When you feel the urge to promise, replace it with follow-through. When you feel the urge to impress, return to discipline. When you feel the urge to justify, return to consistency. Said, confidence comes from being prepared. Preparation here is habit. Habit is action. Action is truth. You don't need to be louder. You need to be steadier. That's the Stoic advantage. Number 8, respect for feminine emotion without absorption. One of the most misunderstood strengths you can develop as a Stoic man is learning how to respect feminine emotion without absorbing it. This is subtle work, quiet work, and because it's quiet, most men miss it entirely. You're taught, directly or indirectly, that emotional moments require fixing, calming, rescuing, or matching energy. But Stoicism points you in a different direction, not toward indifference, not toward detachment, but toward steadiness, toward being present without being pulled off center. Reminded himself, be like the promontory against which the waves continually break. It stands firm, and around it the seething waters are laid to rest. That image matters. You are not the wave, you are the shore. Respecting emotion means you acknowledge it as real, valid, and human, not as a threat, not as a problem you must solve, and certainly not as something you must take into your own nervous system. Absorbing emotion is what happens when you confuse empathy with surrender, when you let someone else's emotional weather decide your internal climate. Over time, this drains you. It makes you reactive, anxious, overly cautious. And ironically, it reduces respect rather than increasing it. Epictetus was clear. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Sometimes that foolishness looks like not reacting the way emotion expects you to react. It looks like calm where chaos wants company. You feel the pull to absorb emotion most strongly when you believe harmony must be maintained at all costs. So you soften your truth, you rush to soothe. You take responsibility for feelings that are not yours to carry. But Stoicism teaches you a sharper form of compassion, one that says, I can see you, hear you, and remain myself. Seneca wrote, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When you absorb emotion, you magnify it internally. You relive it. You wrestle with it long after the moment has passed. Respect, on the other hand, allows emotion to move without becoming lodged inside you. This doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. In fact, it requires more discipline than emotional fusion ever did. It takes strength to stay grounded when intensity rises. It takes confidence to listen without rushing to respond. And it takes self-respect to know where your responsibility ends. Said, do not let your mind run on what you lack as much as on what you have already. What you have is control over your judgments, your actions, your tone, your presence. What you do not have is control over another person's emotional state. The Stoic man knows the difference. When you stop absorbing emotion, your presence changes. You listen more fully because you are not preparing a defense or a solution. Your silence becomes intentional rather than awkward. You stop taking emotional expression personally, which frees you from the need to explain yourself endlessly. This is not passivity. It is mastery. Epictetus taught that events themselves do not disturb us. Our judgments about them do. Emotional expression is an event. Your absorption of it is a judgment. And judgments can be trained. Here is where practice matters. Reading about this is not enough. Start with a simple daily exercise. When emotion appears around you, silently remind yourself, this is not mine to carry. Not in a dismissive way, but in a grounding way. Feel your feet, slow your breath, let your shoulders drop. You are not withdrawing, you are stabilizing. Another Stoic exercise is negative visualization, not to create fear, but to create resilience. Imagine emotional intensity without imagining your collapse. Picture yourself steady, listening, unmoved internally. This mental rehearsal trains your nervous system to respond rather than react. You also need to practice separating understanding from agreement. Respect does not mean you must align with every emotional conclusion. Seneca warned, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. Emotional moments are a form of adversity. They test your center. You can acknowledge feeling without surrendering your perspective. That distinction preserves both honesty and dignity. You don't argue emotion. You don't mirror it. You witness it. That witnessing is powerful. Over time, you'll notice a shift in yourself. You become less exhausted after emotional exchanges. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You no longer feel the need to prove your intentions. This is what inner freedom feels like in practice. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In this context, the best response to emotional turbulence is not turbulence of your own. It's calm. Calm that is not performative, not superior, not rigid. Just calm. Another practical habit is journaling at night, but with a specific lens. Ask yourself one question. Where today did I absorb what I could have respected? Don't shame yourself. Observe. Awareness sharpens instinct. The Stoics believed reflection was essential to character. Over weeks, you'll see patterns. Certain tones, certain triggers, certain moments where you abandon your center. That awareness is progress. Respect without absorption also deepens masculinity in a quiet way. Not the loud, performative kind, but the grounded kind that doesn't need to announce itself. You stop chasing emotional equilibrium externally because you've built it internally. You become consistent, predictable in your steadiness. That consistency creates trust, not because you manage emotions, but because you don't disappear into them. Remember this, emotion is movement. Your role is not to block it or drown in it, but to stand firm while it passes. As reminded himself daily, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Build that retreat. Visit it often. And from that place, you can respect emotion fully, without ever losing yourself in it. Number 9, self-respect as the foundation of attraction. Self-respect is not something you announce. You don't explain it, defend it, or negotiate it. It's something you carry quietly in the way you think, move, decide, and respond. And whether you realize it or not, this inner posture becomes the foundation of attraction. Not because it tries to impress, but because it refuses to collapse. You feel the difference between wanting to be chosen and knowing your own worth. One is restless, the other is grounded. Stoicism has always pointed to this distinction. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Self-respect begins exactly there, in mastery, in choosing not to abandon yourself just to feel wanted. When self-respect is present, your energy changes. You're no longer reaching. You're no longer shrinking. You're not scanning for approval or reacting to every shift in attention. You stand where you are. That steadiness is rare, and rarity creates value. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Read that more broadly. To be unlike chaos, unlike neediness, unlike emotional volatility. Self-respect keeps you from being pulled into states that don't serve you. It makes your reactions measured instead of automatic. And that emotional discipline is felt long before it is understood. Many men confuse attraction with effort. They think doing more, giving more, adjusting more will earn desire. Stoicism dismantles this illusion. Attraction doesn't grow from self-sacrifice that erodes dignity. It grows from alignment. When your actions match your values, there's a coherence to you. You're not fragmented. Seneca warned, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." The same applies here. You don't rush to prove, explain, or secure. You allow things to unfold without abandoning your center. That patience is not passivity. It is strength under control. Self-respect also governs what you tolerate. This is where many men hesitate because boundaries feel risky. But boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. They tell the world how you treat yourself. When you lack them, you send an unspoken message that your time, energy, and emotional state are endlessly available. That message weakens attraction because it signals imbalance. Reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Add to that, if it costs your self-respect, do not accept it. Every time you honor that rule, you strengthen the foundation you stand on. You can feel self-respect in the moments you choose restraint, when you don't chase clarity, when you don't overextend, when you allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. Practice pausing before responding, not as a tactic but as a discipline. Ask yourself, is this response aligned with who I am, or is it driven by fear of losing approval? That single question can change the tone of your interactions entirely. Epictetus taught, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Your behavior is in your power, the outcome is not. Another exercise is to audit your inner dialogue. Self-respect begins internally long before it shows externally. Notice how you speak to yourself when things feel uncertain. Are you bargaining with your own standards? Are you minimizing your needs? Stoic practice demands honesty. Write down one standard you refuse to compromise, not for others but for yourself. Revisit it daily. Let it shape your decisions. Over time, this creates an inner consistency that others instinctively trust. What makes self-respect so powerful is that it doesn't seek attention, yet it commands it. You stop trying to be impressive and start being intentional. Your presence becomes calmer. Your words carry less urgency. You don't need to dominate or withdraw. You simply remain steady. Seneca captured this perfectly. A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. Self-respect removes that unnecessary suffering. It frees you from emotional overinvestment and brings you back to clarity. As you build this foundation, you'll notice a shift. You're less reactive, more deliberate. You no longer interpret every interaction as a test of worth. And in that freedom, attraction naturally grows, not because you pursued it, but because you stopped chasing what was never meant to define you. Wrote, be satisfied with even the smallest progress and treat the result of it as no small matter. This is that progress, quiet, internal, lasting. So commit to this daily, not loudly, not choose self-respect in the small moments, in what you accept, in how you respond, in what you refuse to betray within yourself. This is the foundation. Everything else is built on it. Number 10, leading with values, not fear of loss. One of the most grounding shifts you can make as a man is learning to lead with your values instead of your fear of loss. Fear of loss is subtle. It doesn't always feel like fear. Sometimes it feels like caution. Sometimes it wears the mask of politeness, overthinking, or emotional vigilance. But underneath, it is the same impulse, the need to preserve something external at the cost of your inner alignment. Stoicism asks you to notice this impulse without condemning yourself for it, and then to choose differently. Wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That sentence alone can dismantle fear-driven behavior. When you act from values, your actions become simpler, cleaner, and far more powerful. Fear of loss makes you reactive. It pulls you into a future that hasn't happened yet and convinces you to behave as if it already has. You start managing outcomes instead of governing yourself. You hesitate when you should be firm. You agree when your body is saying no. You rush to fix emotions that aren't yours to fix. This isn't because you're weak. It's because you're human, but Stoicism reminds you that just because a feeling arises doesn't mean it deserves the steering wheel. Epictetus said, it is not events that disturb us but our judgments about them. Fear of loss is a judgment, not a fact, and once you see it as such, you can stop obeying it. Leading with values means you decide who you are before the moment demands a response. It means your behavior is not a negotiation with circumstance. Your values become your filter. Your internal code becomes louder than external pressure. When you operate this way, you stop scanning for signs of approval or rejection. You stop calculating every move for emotional safety. You act because it is aligned, not because it is safe. Seneca wrote, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. For he is not permitted to prove himself. Fear of loss tries to protect you from discomfort, but in doing so, it robs you of self-respect. Values, on the other hand, give you something solid to stand on when discomfort inevitably arrives. This shift changes your presence in ways you may not immediately notice, but others will. When fear is driving you, your energy is scattered. You speak with an invisible question mark at the end of your sentences. Your actions feel tentative. When values are driving you, there is a quiet finality to how you move. Not rigidity, not arrogance, just clarity. You are no longer trying to avoid loss. You are choosing integrity. Reminded himself daily, never value anything as profitable to you which shall compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect. Read that slowly. Loss of self-respect is the only real loss Stoicism asks you to fear. You don't eliminate fear by fighting it. You outgrow it by anchoring yourself in something stronger. Values are that anchor, but they must be lived, not admired. Start with a simple practice. Write down 3 non-negotiable values that define the man you are committed to being. Not traits you wish you had, but principles you are willing to act on even when it's uncomfortable. Keep them short, clear. Then, throughout the day, notice moments where fear of loss tries to override them. The urge to explain yourself, the urge to retreat, the urge to say yes when your inner compass says no. In those moments, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what would acting from my values look like here? Then do that, even if your voice shakes, especially if it does. Another Stoic exercise that strengthens this habit is negative visualization, but applied inward. Instead of imagining external losses, imagine what it would cost you internally to keep abandoning your values. Not dramatically, just honestly. Use this method to strip illusion from desire. When you see clearly that fear-driven actions slowly erode your sense of self, the appeal of approval weakens. You realize that peace does not come from preserving what you fear losing, but from becoming someone who can stand without it. Leading with values also means accepting uncertainty without trying to control it. Fear of loss is a form of control-seeking. It tries to guarantee outcomes. Stoicism teaches you that outcomes are never guaranteed, and that's not a flaw in life, it's a feature. Epictetus was blunt about this. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. What is in your power is your conduct, your choices, your standards. When you focus there, anxiety loses its grip because you are no longer demanding certainty from the world. You may notice resistance as you begin to live this way. Old habits don't dissolve quietly. The mind will argue. It will tell you that leading with values is risky, that it could cost you connection or comfort. Let that thought exist without obeying it. Stoicism never promised you comfort. It promised you freedom. Seneca said, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive." Replace death with loss, and the message remains. A life governed by fear is a life half-lived. Over time, something stabilizes inside you. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop trying to anticipate reactions. Your actions feel more deliberate, less rushed. You begin to trust yourself again, and that trust becomes your real confidence. Not bravado, not performance, just the quiet knowledge that you will not abandon your principles to avoid discomfort. That kind of confidence cannot be taken away because it does not depend on anything external. So take this seriously but gently. You don't need to transform overnight. You need consistency, one decision at a time, one moment where you choose values over fear. Wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Leading with values is not a theory, it is a daily practice. And every time you choose it, you reclaim a little more of your strength, your clarity, and your peace. Before you click away, remember this. Stoicism isn't about suppressing desire, it's about mastering yourself. The behaviors you learn today aren't tricks or manipulation tactics. They're principles. And when lived consistently, they change how women feel around you. Calm, safe, intrigued, and drawn in without you ever chasing approval. Most men will watch a video like this, nod along, and go back to the same reactive habits. A Stoic man does the opposite. He reflects. He applies. He becomes rare. If even one of these behaviors becomes part of how you move through the world, your presence alone will start doing the talking for you. So here's your challenge. Don't try to implement all 10 at once. Choose one. Practice it daily. Let it reshape your mindset, your body language, and your standards. Over time, attraction becomes a byproduct, not the goal. If this video gave you clarity, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to show this message to men who need it. Subscribe if you're serious about self-mastery, masculine discipline, and understanding psychology without losing your edge. And remember, the strongest man in the room never needs to announce it. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. What if I told you that most of the confusion, attraction, and emotional push-and-pull you experience isn't happening out there, but inside your own perceptions? What if the signals you misread, the mixed messages that frustrate you, and the desires you can't quite understand all follow predictable psychological patterns that the Stoics identified centuries ago? Stoicism was never about suppressing emotion. It was about seeing human nature clearly without illusion. And when you apply that lens to modern female psychology, something powerful emerges. Not manipulation, not tricks, but awareness. Awareness of desire, attention, validation, and emotional leverage. Awareness of why certain behaviors trigger attraction while others quietly destroy it. Awareness of how your reactions often matter more than your actions. In this video, we're going to strip away comforting myths and replace them with uncomfortable truths. Truths that give you clarity, emotional control, and quiet confidence. This isn't about blaming. It's about understanding. And once you understand, you stop chasing, overthinking, and second-guessing yourself. Watch this video till the very end, because the final insights tie everything together. And if you miss them, you miss the transformation. What you'll learn here won't just change how you see women, it will change how you see yourself. Number 1, emotional control creates subconscious attraction. You've probably heard Epictetus say, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Read that again slowly, because hidden inside that sentence is a quiet force most people underestimate. Emotional control isn't just about being calm or mature. It's a form of power. And power, when held without noise, creates a pull that works beneath words, beneath logic, beneath conscious choice. You feel it before you can explain it. So do others. Especially those who are highly attuned to emotional signals, moods, shifts in energy. When you control your inner world, you stop broadcasting chaos. And when chaos disappears, curiosity appears. That's where attraction begins, not on the surface, but in the subconscious. You live in a world that rewards emotional exposure. Say everything, explain everything, react instantly, defend yourself quickly. Vent, perform. Stoicism asks you to do the opposite, not to suppress, but to govern. There's a difference. Suppression is fear in disguise. Governance is strength made quiet. When you don't react impulsively, when you don't let every emotion spill out unchecked, you create space. And space is magnetic. The mind naturally leans toward what feels grounded, stable, unshaken. You don't need to announce your confidence. Emotional control communicates it for you, silently, relentlessly. Wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That image alone explains why emotional steadiness pulls people in without effort. Here's the uncomfortable truth most won't tell you. Volatility is exhausting to witness. Even when it's exciting at first, it creates subconscious tension. Emotional control, on the other hand, signals safety, depth, and self-respect. When you are not ruled by impulse, you appear rare, and rarity creates value. You stop chasing reactions and start becoming the reference point. People begin to check themselves around you. They adjust their tone. They slow down. not because you demand it, but because your presence invites regulation. This is not manipulation. This is alignment. You are aligned with yourself, and that alignment gently pulls others out of emotional noise and into awareness. You don't need dramatic displays of indifference. That's still a performance. True emotional control is subtle. It's the pause before you speak. It's the choice not to explain yourself when silence is sufficient. It's knowing what you feel without being owned by it. Seneca said, "The greatest power is to be master of oneself." When you embody that, you become unpredictable in the best way. Not chaotic, but unreactive. People can't read you easily, and the mind is drawn to what it cannot immediately decode. Curiosity is born there. Attraction grows there, not because you are distant, but because you are centered. This is where Stoicism quietly intersects with what many call dark psychology. Though there is nothing dark about self-mastery, what's unsettling is how rare it is. Emotional control removes leverage from the external world. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you. Approval doesn't addict you. Disapproval doesn't threaten you. When someone realizes subconsciously that they cannot control your emotional state, something shifts. Respect appears. Interest deepens. Not because you dominate, but because you are free. Freedom is deeply attractive. It suggests abundance. It suggests options. It suggests that you choose rather than cling. But let's be clear, this isn't about becoming cold or detached. Stoicism never asked you to feel less. It asked you to feel better, to refine emotion, not erase it. You still experience desire, disappointment, excitement, frustration. The difference is that you don't outsource your balance to external events. You don't let momentary feelings dictate permanent behavior. And when you stop reacting automatically, you start responding deliberately. That shift alone changes how you move, how you speak, how you listen. Your words carry weight because they aren't rushed. Your silence carries meaning because it isn't empty. Everything slows down, and in that slowness, presence becomes palpable. Now let's talk about habit, because attraction rooted in emotional control is not built overnight. It's trained. Start with this: observe before you react. Every time you feel the urge to respond immediately, pause for a breath, just one. That breath is a wedge between impulse and action. In that space, ask yourself a Stoic question: is this within my control? If it isn't, release it. If it is, act calmly. This practice alone begins rewiring how you show up emotionally. Another exercise is voluntary restraint. Choose deliberately not to express every thought or feeling. Not because you're hiding, but because you're choosing relevance over release. Seneca advised rehearsing adversity in the mind. Do the same with emotion. Imagine moments that usually trigger you and picture yourself responding with composure. The mind trains before the body follows. There's also the discipline of detachment from outcome. This is crucial. When you act without being emotionally dependent on results, your energy changes. You become lighter, less needy, less tense. You're no longer trying to extract validation from reactions. Reminded himself daily, I have power over my mind, not outside events. Write that somewhere you'll see it. Read it until it stops being words and starts being posture. When your emotional state is no longer bargaining with the world, you naturally project self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is deeply compelling because it suggests wholeness. Practice emotional economy. Ask yourself, is this reaction necessary? Is it useful? Is it aligned with who I want to become? Most emotional outbursts fail all three tests. When you start filtering your reactions, you conserve energy. That energy shows up as calm intensity, as grounded presence, as a kind of quiet certainty that doesn't beg to be noticed but is felt anyway. Over time, people begin to associate you with stability, with clarity, with control. Not control over them, but control over yourself. And that distinction matters more than you think. Remember, you are not trying to attract by force. You are allowing attraction to happen as a byproduct of order within. When your inner world is disciplined, it radiates outward. No effort, no strategy, just coherence. Epictetus never spoke of charm, yet his philosophy creates it, because emotional control removes desperation from your energy, and desperation repels at a level deeper than words. Calm, on the other hand, invites. It reassures. It intrigues. So start today, not by changing how others see you, but by changing how you handle what you feel. Train the pause, practice restraint, detach from outcomes. Govern your inner state like it matters, because it does. Emotional control is not repression, it's refinement. And when you refine yourself, attraction follows quietly, naturally, without asking for permission. Number 2, mystery increases perceived value. Mystery increases perceived value because the human mind leans forward when it doesn't have everything handed to it. You already know this intuitively. Think about how little effort the mind gives to what is fully explained, fully available, fully predictable. There is no tension there, no gravity. Stoicism understood this long before modern psychology put it into clinical language. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. He wasn't encouraging silence for the sake of deception. He was pointing toward restraint, toward the power that comes from not rushing to expose every thought, every intention, every emotion. When you stop explaining yourself endlessly, you stop leaking value. You stop begging to be understood. You let space do the work. And space, when held with calm confidence, becomes magnetic. You live in a world that rewards noise. Oversharing is praised as honesty. Constant availability is mistaken for warmth. Stoicism pushes you in the opposite direction, not because women respond to games, but because the mind responds to depth. Mystery isn't about hiding who you are. It's about not collapsing yourself into something easily consumed. Wrote, be like the promontory against which the waves continually break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. That firmness creates unanswered questions. When your reactions are measured instead of impulsive, when your words are chosen instead of poured out, the other person senses that there is more beneath the surface. And what has depth always feels more valuable than what spills everywhere. Female psychology at its core is deeply attuned to emotional contrast. Calm against chaos, presence against absence, certainty against overexposure. When you reveal everything at once, you remove contrast, you flatten yourself. Mystery restores that contrast. It says without saying, there is more here, and it unfolds over time. Stoicism teaches you to slow that unfolding. Seneca advised, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay doesn't just cool emotion, it increases weight. When you pause instead of reacting, when you listen more than you speak, when you don't rush to define or explain, your words gain density. Each one matters more. You don't have to perform, you just have to be anchored. You're not being asked to become distant or cold. Quite the opposite. Stoic mystery comes from inner fullness, not emptiness. When your sense of worth isn't dependent on immediate validation, you stop trying to prove yourself. That absence of need is felt instantly. It creates a subtle tension, a curiosity that pulls attention inward rather than pushing it away. Epictetus said, seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. When you release the need to control outcomes, you stop overinvesting in impressions. You become steady, and steadiness is rare. Rare things are valued. There is also discipline here, and discipline is attractive because it signals mastery. A man who can hold his tongue, who doesn't rush to fill silence, who doesn't narrate his intentions aloud, communicates self-command, not through dominance but through composure. Mystery is simply the outward expression of inner order. When you know who you are, you don't need to announce it. When your direction is clear, you don't argue for it. Reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Let that sink in. Being replaces explaining. Presence replaces performance. You can train this. Start with silence but not withdrawal. Practice pausing before you respond, even internally. Notice the urge to clarify yourself, to soften your stance, to fill the gap. Don't suppress it with force, just watch it, let it pass. That moment of restraint is where mystery is born. Another exercise is intentional brevity. Say less than you normally would, but make each word deliberate. Feel how your body reacts when you don't overextend. There will be discomfort at first. That's good. Growth often begins there. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." You can also practice emotional containment. When something excites you, resist the impulse to spill it immediately. When something irritates you, don't rush to express it. This isn't repression, it's refinement. You're learning to choose the right moment rather than reacting to the first impulse. Over time, your emotional energy becomes quieter but heavier. People feel it. They lean in. Mystery isn't loud, it hums. Another practice is removing the need to be fully understood. This is a big one. Stoicism teaches that misunderstanding is not a threat to your character. "It never ceases to amaze me," wrote, "We all love ourselves more than other people but care more about their opinions than our own." Let go of that. When you stop chasing understanding, you stop explaining. When you stop explaining, you allow others to discover. Discovery creates attachment far more reliably than information. There's a deeper layer too. Mystery protects your inner world. Not everyone deserves full access to your thoughts, your doubts, your plans. Stoicism isn't secrecy, it's discernment. You don't open every door just because someone knocks. You choose. That choice itself communicates value. It tells the world that your inner life is not cheap, and what is not cheap is treated with care. You don't need tricks, you don't need manipulation, you need restraint, presence, and patience. Mystery grows naturally when you stop rushing the process, when you trust time, when you allow attraction to unfold instead of forcing it. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Become grounded, become composed, become comfortable with space. The rest follows. So take this with you. Today, say a little less. Pause a little longer. Explain a little less. Feel the strength in that restraint. Mystery is not something you manufacture. It's something that appears when you stop trying so hard to be seen. And paradoxically, that's when you are seen most clearly. Number 3, scarcity triggers. Desire more than availability. Scarcity triggers desire more than availability because the human mind is wired to lean toward what feels rare, restrained, and self-contained. And Stoicism understood this long before modern psychology gave it new labels. When Epictetus said, "If you want to be invincible, make yourself indifferent to things that are not in your control," he wasn't just talking about inner peace. He was pointing to a deeper law of attraction that most people miss. When you are not easily available emotionally, mentally, or energetically, you create space. And space creates gravity. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't flood the world with your presence hoping someone notices. You stand rooted, composed, and selective. That restraint doesn't push people away. It pulls them in. Especially when it comes to desire, availability dulls interest, while scarcity sharpens it. You've probably been conditioned to believe that more effort, more attention, more reassurance equals more attraction. Stoicism turns that belief on its head. Wrote, "Respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you." That sentence alone dismantles the habit of overgiving. When you are always available, always responsive, always eager, you communicate something without saying a word, that your time, attention, and emotional energy are cheap, not worthless, but common. And the mind does not crave what it can access at will. Desire grows in the presence of uncertainty, boundaries, and self-respect. This isn't about playing games. It's about genuinely having a full inner world that does not orbit around external validation. Stoicism teaches you to anchor yourself internally. When you stop outsourcing your worth, something subtle changes in how others perceive you. You become less readable, less predictable, less dependent, and that independence activates curiosity. Scarcity in this sense is not artificial distance, it is natural selectiveness. You are not withholding to manipulate, you are simply not overextending. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you spread yourself thin, when you try to be everything to everyone, your presence loses weight. But when you are grounded, reserved, and intentional, your presence becomes felt even in silence. Female psychology at its core is deeply responsive to emotional cues rather than words. What you do with your energy matters more than what you say. When you remain calm, self-contained, and unreactive, you signal strength. When you don't rush to explain yourself, justify yourself, or prove yourself, you communicate confidence. Scarcity here means you don't hand out access to your inner world without discernment. You don't reveal everything at once. You don't collapse your boundaries for approval. And that restraint creates tension, the healthy kind, the kind that keeps attention alive. You don't need to withdraw from the world to embody scarcity. You simply need to stop leaking yourself everywhere. Stop responding instantly out of anxiety. Stop oversharing out of nervousness. Stop giving reassurance when it hasn't been earned. Stoicism reminds you that peace comes from self-command, and self-command is attractive because it is rare. Most people are ruled by impulses, fears, and the need to be liked. When you are not, you stand apart. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is magnetic. Here, where many people misunderstand this principle, scarcity is not coldness. It is warmth with limits. It is presence without desperation. You are kind but not consuming, interested but not invested prematurely, available but not on demand. This balance is what keeps desire alive. When someone senses that your life is full, that your emotional state does not rise and fall based on their reactions, something shifts. They lean in. Not because you ask them to, but because the human mind is drawn toward what feels self-sufficient. Stoicism also warns against attachment to outcomes. When you detach from the need to be chosen, you paradoxically become more rote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you stop trying to control how others feel about you, you reclaim your power. And power, when it is quiet and grounded, triggers desire far more than effort ever could. You are no longer performing, you are being. To internalize this, you need practice. Start with a simple exercise. Observe your impulses. Notice how often you feel the urge to reach out, explain, reassure, or seek confirmation. Don't judge it, just notice it. Then pause. Take one slow breath and ask yourself, is this coming from calm strength or from the fear of losing? If it's fear, do nothing. Let the urge pass. This single habit alone will transform how you show up. Another exercise is intentional silence. Not withdrawal, not punishment, silence as discipline. Give yourself moments where you choose not to fill the space. Let conversations breathe. Let pauses exist. The Stoics believed silence was a form of wisdom. Seneca said, "Nature gave us one tongue and two ears so we might hear more than we speak." When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you act less, your presence becomes more felt. You can also practice scarcity internally by reducing emotional overinvestment early. This doesn't mean being detached or indifferent. It means staying grounded in your own life. Keep your routines sacred. Protect your time. Maintain your standards quietly. When you do this, you don't need to signal scarcity. It radiates naturally. People feel it. They sense that access to you is earned, not guaranteed. Finally, reflect daily. Ask yourself, where did I give too much today? Where did I abandon my center? Where did I act from need rather than choice? Stoicism is built on daily self-examination. Journaled not to impress anyone but to refine himself. When you do the same, you sharpen your inner edge, and that inner edge is what creates outer attraction. Scarcity is not a tactic. It is a byproduct of self-respect. When you value yourself, your time, and your emotional energy, others follow suit. You stop trying to be desired and start becoming grounded, and grounded men are rare. In a world addicted to noise, calm stands out. In a world addicted to excess, restraint feels powerful. In a world addicted to availability, scarcity becomes unforgettable. Number 4, validation independence signals high status. Validation independence signals high status because it reveals something deeper than confidence. It shows self-governance. And in Stoic terms, self-governance is power. When you stop outsourcing your worth to reactions, approval, or attention, you quietly step into a position most people never reach. Epictetus warned you about this long ago when he said, "If you want to be invincible, make no treaty with what is outside your control." Validation from others is always outside your control. The moment you rely on it, you hand your center away. The moment you no longer need it, you reclaim something rare, inner authority. And that authority is felt, not announced. It's sensed before it's understood. You don't need to chase recognition to be noticed. In fact, the less you seek affirmation, the more gravity you carry. Validation independence doesn't mean coldness or indifference. It means you are already full before anyone reacts. You are no longer asking, "Was that good enough?" after every move. You act because your values demand it, not because applause might follow. Reminded you of this when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." When you internalize this, your behavior changes. Your tone slows. Your decisions sharpen. Your presence becomes steadier. And that steadiness signals status at a primal level because it suggests abundance, not need. Neediness is loud. Independence is quiet. And quiet confidence is deeply compelling because it implies options. When you don't seek validation, you're communicating, without words, that your life is already structured around purpose. You are not auditioning. You are choosing. That subtle shift rewires how you're perceived. You're no longer trying to be accepted. You're deciding what aligns with you. This is why Stoicism places so much emphasis on inner judgment. Seneca put it plainly, "He who depends on himself for happiness is the happiest." When you depend on yourself, you stop broadcasting insecurity. And insecurity is always sensed, even when hidden behind charm. There's something psychologically powerful about someone who doesn't flinch when approval is delayed, or it signals emotional resilience. It signals that you've trained yourself to remain centered under uncertainty. That's rare. Most people bend, perform, or when they feel unseen. You don't. You remain composed. You don't rush to correct perceptions. You let time do the work. This restraint reads as high status because it mirrors leadership. Leaders don't beg for agreement. They act from principle and let results speak. When you live this way, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a goal. Validation independence also sharpens your discernment. When you're no longer hungry for affirmation, you can see clearly. You stop mistaking attention for connection. You stop confusing interest with alignment. Your standards rise naturally because you're not negotiating your self-respect for momentary reassurance. Epictetus taught you to ask one question above all others. What is in my control? Your values are. Your effort is. Your response is. Approval never was. Once this sinks in, you stop reacting emotionally to every signal. You become selective with your energy. And selectiveness is another marker of status. Scarcity always increases value, especially when it's self-imposed. Now, this doesn't happen by accident. Validation independence is trained. It's practiced daily, often in uncomfortable moments when your instinct is to seek reassurance. That's where the work is. The Stoics didn't preach detachment as theory, they practiced it as discipline. One exercise you can begin immediately is intentional silence. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, justify your choices, or seek confirmation, pause, breathe. Ask yourself whether your values require a response or whether your ego does. Then act accordingly. Each time you choose restraint over reassurance, you strengthen your inner spine. Another practice is judgment fasting. For a set period each day, refuse to mentally rate yourself based on outcomes or reactions. No internal applause, no self-criticism, just action. You do what needs to be done and move on. Lived this when he wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. You don't have time to tally validation points. You have work to do." This practice recalibrates your nervous system. Over time, your mind stops scanning for approval because it learns that nothing bad happens when it's absent. You can also train validation independence through voluntary discomfort. Choose small acts where you deliberately remove external reinforcement. Work without announcing it. Improve without posting it. Progress without witnesses. Seneca called this building inner wealth, the kind no one can take from you. When you prove to yourself that effort still matters even when unseen, you break the addiction to external confirmation. And that freedom changes how you carry yourself. Your posture shifts. Your eye contact steadies. Your reactions soften. People sense that you're not performing for them, and paradoxically, that makes you more compelling. What's crucial to understand is that validation independence doesn't make you distant, it makes you grounded. You listen better because you're not waiting to be praised. You speak more precisely because you're not fishing for reactions. You move through interactions without urgency. Urgency is always a tell. Calm is always commanding. When you stop trying to impress, you start to impress effortlessly. Not because you're trying, but because your nervous system is no longer hijacked by outcome dependence. The Stoics believed that true power was mastery of the self. Everything else was noise. When you embody that belief, you no longer negotiate your worth in the marketplace of opinions. You stand on something internal and unshakable. That's what high status actually is, not dominance, not bravado, but inner sufficiency. When you have it, others feel it. And when they feel it, attraction follows naturally, quietly, without effort. So begin today. Notice where you seek approval unnecessarily. Notice the tension that arises when it's absent. Don't fight it, sit with it. Train yourself to remain whole without external reinforcement. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Validation independence is that mastery. Build it patiently, guard it fiercely, and let your presence speak for you long before words ever do. Number 5, calm confidence feels safer than loud dominance. Calm confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't bang on the door demanding attention. It doesn't need volume, exaggeration, or force. It simply is. And that quiet presence does something powerful inside the human nervous system, especially when it comes to attraction. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology tried to give it names. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line alone explains why calm confidence feels safer than loud dominance. You don't need to perform strength when you embody it. You don't need to signal control when you already have it. And on a deeper, almost unconscious level, this steadiness communicates security, reliability, and emotional safety far more effectively than aggression ever could. Loud dominance is unstable by nature. It relies on external validation, on reactions, on proving something to the world. You can feel the tension in it, the effort, the subtle desperation underneath the noise. Calm confidence, on the other hand, is relaxed because it isn't trying to convince anyone. It doesn't rush. It doesn't posture. You feel grounded in yourself, and that groundedness is contagious. The Stoics would call this not indifference, but freedom from inner chaos. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you move through life without being easily shaken, without needing to dominate conversations or situations, you project a kind of inner order. That order feels safe. And safety is not boring. Safety is magnetic when it's paired with self-respect. You need to understand this clearly. Calm confidence is not weakness and it is not passivity. It's restraint, it's power under control. Seneca put it bluntly, he who is brave is free. Loud dominance is often the opposite. It's reactive. It flares up because it's threatened. Calm confidence doesn't flare, it observes. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't feel compelled to prove your worth. You trust your presence enough to let moments breathe. That trust in yourself subtly tells others, I can handle uncertainty. I can handle emotion. I can handle myself. And when someone feels that from you, their guard lowers. Not because you pushed it down, but because it no longer feels necessary. This is where Stoicism cuts through the illusion of dark psychology. There is nothing manipulative about stability. There is nothing deceptive about emotional regulation. If anything, it's honest. Loud dominance tries to control outcomes. Calm confidence focuses on character. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you live from that principle, your energy changes. You stop chasing reactions. You stop forcing impressions. You become slower, more deliberate, more selective. And paradoxically, that selectiveness increases your pull, because what is not desperate does not repel. What is not needy does not suffocate. What is centered does not threaten. If you want to cultivate this, you must start internally. No technique will save you if your mind is frantic. Begin with a simple daily exercise. Sit in silence for 5 minutes and do nothing but observe your breath. No fixing, no improving, just noticing. When thoughts arise, let them pass without chasing them. This trains you to be comfortable without stimulation, without noise, without performance. Another exercise, practice responding instead of reacting. The next time you feel the urge to interrupt, assert, or dominate a moment, pause for one full breath. That breath is where calm confidence lives. It's a small delay, but it changes everything. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Decide to be composed, and your actions will follow. You should also train your relationship with control. Stoicism teaches the dichotomy of control for a reason. You cannot control how others perceive you, but you can control your conduct. When you stop trying to manage impressions, your body language softens, your voice steadies, your movements slow down. This isn't accidental, it's alignment. Loud dominance is misalignment, it's effort pointing outward. Calm confidence is alignment, it's effort pointing inward. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Calm confidence comes from facing your inner storms and no longer being ruled by them. When you've done that work, you don't need to overpower anything outside of you. There's also a moral dimension here that the Stoics would insist on. True confidence is rooted in virtue. Without virtue, what you call confidence becomes arrogance. Without wisdom, it becomes recklessness. Without temperance, it becomes excess. And excess is exhausting to be around. When you practice moderation in speech, in emotion, and desire, you become predictable in the best way. Predictability here doesn't mean boring, it means trustworthy. Your reactions are proportionate. Your emotions are regulated. Your presence is steady. That steadiness creates psychological safety without you ever having to demand it. As said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, don't mirror chaos. Be the calm. Make this practical. Every evening, reflect briefly on where you sought control instead of composure. Don't judge yourself, just note it. Then ask, what would restraint have looked like here? This builds awareness. Another exercise, reduce unnecessary speech for one day. Not silence, but intention. Speak when your words add clarity, not noise. You'll notice how much strength there is in not reacting immediately, not filling space compulsively. This isn't about playing mysterious. It's about respecting your own energy. And when you respect it, others feel it. Calm confidence feels safer because it signals maturity. It signals that you're not at war with yourself. It signals that you don't need to dominate to feel whole. Loud dominance might grab attention, but calm confidence earns trust. And trust is where deeper attraction lies. Not in intensity alone, but in consistency. Not in force, but in presence. The Stoics weren't teaching you how to impress. They were teaching you how to stand firm. If you adopt that posture, not as a tactic, but as a way of being, you stop chasing approval and start attracting alignment. And that shift, quiet as it is, changes everything. Number 6, detachment exposes true intentions. Detachment exposes true intentions because when you stop clinging, chasing, or trying to control outcomes, everything that was previously hidden starts to surface on its own. This is not manipulation, it's clarity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned you plainly. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can provoke you by what they say or do. Detachment is not coldness, it's sovereignty. When you no longer need approval, reassurance, or validation, the emotional fog lifts. You stop projecting desires onto others and start seeing what actually is. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can only understand psychology when you are no longer enslaved by it. The moment you emotionally step back, people reveal themselves without realizing it. Not because you're testing them, but because your stillness removes the pressure that forces masks to stay on. When you're attached, you distort reality. You read meaning where there is none. You ignore signals you don't want to see. You warmth and rationalize indifference. Attachment creates noise. Detachment creates signal. Wrote, you see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. That sentence alone dismantles most confusion around attraction and desire. When you're detached, you're no longer trying to be chosen. You're observing, you're listening. You're present without leaning forward emotionally. And in that space, intentions surface naturally. Energy shifts. Effort becomes visible. Consistency speaks louder. Silence speaks even louder. You don't need to interrogate or demand clarity. Detachment becomes the filter that separates genuine interest from fleeting attention. What Stoicism reveals is that desire reacts to absence of need. Not absence of presence, absence of need. When you don't need a response, a reaction, or a result, you stop unconsciously bargaining. You stop performing, and that's when dynamics recalibrate. The ancient Stoics never spoke about attraction the way modern culture does, yet the principles apply perfectly. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Emotional bravery is stepping back without resentment. It's allowing space without fear. It's letting others move as they will, not as you hope they will. And paradoxically, that freedom exposes what words often conceal. Desire either leans in or it doesn't. Intention either shows up or it fades. Detachment removes your interference from the equation. You're not withdrawing to punish. You're withdrawing to see clearly. That distinction matters. When detachment is rooted in self-respect rather than strategy, it becomes magnetic in a quiet way. You stop asking, "What do they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of how this feels?" That shift changes everything. You no longer chase clarity, you allow it to arrive. And clarity always arrives when you stop forcing movement. Stoicism teaches you to align with reality, not wrestle it. As reminded himself daily, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. Detachment brings you back to yourself. And when you are anchored, others reveal how they truly stand. There is also a darker truth here, one most people avoid. Attachment invites ambiguity. Detachment dissolves it. When you are overly invested, mixed signals survive because you're subconsciously invested in their survival. When you are detached, mixed signals collapse under their own weight. You don't argue with them. You don't analyze them endlessly. You let behavior speak. And behavior always speaks. Stoicism isn't about emotional suppression, it's about emotional discipline. You feel fully, but you don't surrender control. You don't let desire hijack perception. That's why detachment sharpens intuition, not mystical intuition, clear perception. You begin to sense alignment or resistance without dramatizing either, and that calm awareness is deeply grounding. To practice this, start with a simple daily discipline. Each morning, remind yourself, I control my effort, not outcomes. Write it down, say it slowly, let it sink in. Throughout the day, whenever you feel the urge to seek reassurance or mentally chase a reaction, pause, breathe once. Then ask yourself, what happens if I do nothing right now? That question alone builds detachment. Another exercise, observe without labeling. When emotions arise, don't call them good or bad, just notice them. Seneca advised, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Detachment shrinks imagination back to its proper size. Another powerful practice is voluntary restraint. Not avoidance, restraint. Delay responses. Reduce emotional immediacy. Give yourself space before reacting. This isn't a tactic, it's training. You are teaching yourself that urgency is optional. Over time, your nervous system calms. And when you are calm, your presence changes. You stop leaking need. You stop trying to secure outcomes, and that absence of desperation is felt immediately, even if unspoken. Stoicism calls this freedom from destructive passions, not freedom from feeling. You still care, but you're no longer controlled. Detachment also protects you. When intentions are unclear, distance prevents self-betrayal. You stop explaining away inconsistency. You stop investing where there is no reciprocity. This is not cynicism, it's discernment. Epictetus was blunt about this. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Detachment is embodiment. It's allowing actions to reveal truth without confrontation or force. You don't need to corner anyone into honesty. Time and space do that for you. Ultimately, detachment returns you to power, not power over others, but power over yourself. And that is the only power Stoicism ever advocated. When you are centered, grounded, and unattached to outcomes, you become harder to deceive and easier to respect. Intentions rise to the surface because there is nothing for them to hide behind. No pressure, no chasing, no emotional bargaining, just clarity. And clarity, once seen, cannot be unseen. So practice stepping back. Practice not reaching for certainty too quickly. Practice trusting that truth reveals itself when you stop interfering. As wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Detachment may feel uncomfortable at first. Let it. Growth often does. But with time, you'll realize that detachment doesn't cost you connection, it refines it. And in that refinement, you stop guessing, stop hopping blindly, and start seeing reality as it is. Calm. Honest, unmistakable. Number 7. Self-mastery outshines external success. You're taught early on that success is something people can see. Status, results, applause, titles, numbers. But Stoicism quietly dismantles that illusion and replaces it with something far more unsettling and far more powerful. The idea that what truly commands respect, attraction, and psychological gravity is not what you achieve, but what you master within yourself. Epictetus said it plainly, no man is free who is not master of himself. Read that again. Freedom, influence, presence, they all begin inside you. And when you start to grasp this, you begin to understand something subtle yet profound about female psychology and hidden desires. External success may impress, but self-mastery creates safety, intrigue, and depth. One can be admired, the other is felt, and people are wired to respond to what they feel more than what they see. You can sense the difference immediately when someone is ruled by impulses versus someone who governs them. Stoicism teaches that the highest form of power is restraint, not suppression, not emotional numbness, but conscious command. Wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength changes how you move, how you speak, how you remain steady when things don't go your way. You stop chasing reactions. You stop performing. You stop leaking neediness through tone, posture, and timing. And here's the part most people miss. Self-mastery removes desperation from your energy. Where there is no desperation, there is calm. Where there is calm, there is trust. And where there is trust, attraction follows naturally, without effort or manipulation. What draws people in isn't the noise of achievement, but the quiet certainty of someone who is not trying to prove anything. Stoicism calls this self-sufficiency. When you no longer depend on external validation to feel whole, you become psychologically grounded. You listen more. You react less. You pause before responding. You're not in a hurry to fill silence or defend your ego. That restraint creates space, and space is magnetic. Seneca warned, "He who is brave is free," and bravery here is not loud courage. It's the courage to sit with discomfort, to not chase pleasure compulsively, to not flee from boredom, rejection, or uncertainty. This kind of bravery signals emotional maturity at a level most people never reach. You begin to realize that external success without inner order actually works against you. It amplifies insecurity instead of resolving it. Stoicism exposes this contradiction mercilessly. You can have achievements and still be ruled by impulses, moods, and fears. You can win externally and still lose control internally. And that loss is visible, even if no one can articulate it. Stoics understood that character leaks through behavior. It shows up in how you handle frustration, how you respond to boundaries, how you deal with delays, how you manage desire. Self-mastery refines all of this. It slows you down in the best way. You become deliberate, intentional, hard to shake. And psychological steadiness is far more compelling than any surface-level success. There's also something darker and more honest that Stoicism reveals. People are drawn to those who cannot be easily controlled, not in a rebellious sense, but in a grounded one. When your emotions are not easily provoked, when praise doesn't inflate you and criticism doesn't collapse you, you become unpredictable in a powerful way. You are no longer reactive. You choose. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That line cuts deep because it points to ego death. The moment you stop needing to look impressive is the moment you start becoming impressive at a level that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the nervous system. Now, this isn't about detachment turning you cold. Stoicism was never about emotional absence, it was about emotional leadership. You still feel desire, attraction, interest, and curiosity, but they don't own you. You own them. That difference changes everything. Instead of chasing outcomes, you focus on conduct. Instead of asking, "What do I get?" you ask, "Who am I becoming?" And ironically, when you stop trying to extract value from interactions, people sense it. There's no pressure. No agenda, just presence. And presence is rare. Presence is felt. Presence is remembered. To live this, you need practice, not theory. Start with awareness. Each day, notice where your impulses try to rush you toward validation, reassurance, attention, pleasure. Don't judge it. Observe it. Reminded himself daily, "Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence." Not to become bitter, but to remain prepared. You can do the same. Anticipate emotional triggers so they lose their power. When desire flares up, pause, count your breath. Ask yourself whether acting now strengthens or weakens your inner command. This single pause, repeated daily, builds more self-mastery than years of external striving. Another exercise is voluntary discomfort. Stoics practice this deliberately. Skip small comforts. Delay gratification. Choose the harder option when it builds discipline, not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself that you are not dependent on ease. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare." In modern terms, it's about training your nervous system to stay calm without constant stimulation. When you can remain centered without comfort, approval, or certainty, you radiate an unspoken strength. You become internally rich, regardless of external conditions. You should also practice emotional economy. Say less than you feel, react less than you could. Let moments breathe. Silence is not weakness, it's control. When you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, when you stop emotions to be understood, you reclaim authority over your inner world. And that authority is sensed instantly. You're no longer broadcasting need. You're grounded, anchored, self-directed. Ultimately, Stoicism teaches you that attraction is a byproduct, not a goal. The moment you aim directly at it, you lose the very qualities that create it. Self-mastery shifts your focus inward where real leverage exists. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop negotiating with your impulses. You stop being dragged by outcomes. And in doing so, you step into a form of quiet dominance, not over others, but over yourself. That's the kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to, it's felt. And once felt, it's rarely forgotten. Number 8, unreactive behavior tests emotional strength. Unreactive behavior isn't silence and it isn't weakness. It's restraint with awareness. It's the quiet power of choosing not to be pulled into every emotional current that brushes against you. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned you that it is not things themselves that disturb us but our judgments about them. When you don't react impulsively, you're showing that your inner world is governed, not hijacked. And whether people admit it or not, this composure is felt immediately. Emotional volatility repels because it signals fragility. Emotional steadiness attracts because it signals strength. When you don't rush to defend, explain, or prove yourself, you communicate something without saying a word. You trust yourself enough to remain centered. At a psychological level, unreactive behavior creates tension in the mind of the observer. Not chaos, tension, the kind that provokes curiosity. When emotions are thrown at you and they don't stick, the other person is forced to confront their own expectations. They expected a spark. They expected resistance. They expected you to wobble. Instead, they're met with calm. This calm acts like a mirror. It reflects insecurity back to its source and paradoxically makes you appear grounded and self-sufficient. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you embody this, you're demonstrating mastery over the one domain that truly matters. You live in a world that rewards instant reactions, quick replies, quick defenses, quick emotional displays, but Stoicism teaches you to pause, and that pause is where your power lives. When you don't immediately react, you buy yourself space. Space to choose, space to remain dignified, space to act instead of perform. This isn't emotional suppression, it's emotional discipline. There's a difference. Suppression is fear-based. Discipline is strength-based, and people intuitively sense which one you're operating from. When you remain unshaken, you communicate that your sense of self isn't dependent on external validation or emotional theatrics. Unreactive behavior tests emotional strength because it forces you to sit with discomfort. The urge to react is often the urge to escape unease. Stoicism asks you to stay, to breathe, to observe. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Every time you resist reacting, you're loosening the grip that emotions have over you. You're proving to yourself that you don't need to win every emotional exchange to maintain your worth. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Calm stops being an effort and starts becoming your baseline. From a psychological perspective, unpredictability paired with stability is powerful. When you're emotionally unreactive, you're no longer easy to read, manipulate, or provoke. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you solid. You don't broadcast insecurity through exaggerated reactions, nor do you seek reassurance through emotional displays. Instead, you allow silence, stillness, and presence to do the work. This unsettles people who rely on emotional control dynamics, and it draws in those who value depth and self-mastery. You're no longer playing the game, you're standing above it. Stoicism never told you to be indifferent to life. It taught you to be selective. Selective with your energy, selective with your emotional investment, selective with what deserves a response. When you react to everything, you cheapen your attention. When you choose carefully, your presence gains weight. Epictetus reminded you, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not reacting often looks like weakness to those who don't understand inner strength. Let them misunderstand. Your job isn't to perform strength, it's to embody it. This is where habits matter. Unreactive behavior isn't a switch you flip once. It's a muscle you train. Start by practicing the pause. When you feel the urge to react, count your breath. Not to calm down, but to create space. In that space, ask yourself one simple question. Is my reaction serving my values or my ego? You'll be surprised how often it's the latter. Another practice is mental reframing. Instead of labeling situations as provocations, label them as tests. Tests of composure, tests of patience, tests of self-respect. When you see them this way, you stop feeling attacked and start feeling challenged in a way that sharpens you rather than drains you. You can also practice voluntary discomfort. Stoics believed in training the mind through intentional restraint. Choose moments to withhold reaction even when it feels justified. Not forever, just long enough to prove to yourself that you can. Write down what you felt, not what you did. This builds awareness without judgment. Over time, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Your emotions become quieter, not because they're weaker, but because they trust you to handle them. There's a deeper layer here. Unreactive behavior signals that you are not emotionally needy. Neediness isn't about desire, it's about dependency. When you react strongly, you often reveal that something external has too much control over your internal state. Stoicism teaches you to reclaim that control, to desire without attachment, to care without clinging, to remain warm without being reactive. This balance is rare, and rarity is magnetic. Remember, the goal isn't to appear mysterious or detached. The goal is to be rooted. When your reactions are measured, your words carry more weight. When your emotions are regulated, your presence feels safe and strong. People trust what feels stable. They lean toward what doesn't waver at every emotional breeze. And this stability begins with you, alone, practicing restraint when no one is watching. Wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In modern terms, the best demonstration of strength is not to mirror emotional chaos. It's to transcend it. When you stop reacting impulsively, you stop giving your power away. You reclaim authorship over your inner life. And that, more than any display or explanation, communicates depth, confidence, and quiet authority. So start small. Pause longer than feels comfortable. Speak less than feels necessary. React only when it aligns with who you're becoming. This isn't about control over others. It's about mastery over yourself. And once you taste that mastery, you won't want to go back. Number 9, purpose-driven men. Evoke deeper curiosity. When you live with purpose, something subtle but undeniable happens around you. You don't announce it. You don't advertise it, yet people feel it. And when it comes to female psychology, this quiet gravity stirs a deeper kind of curiosity, the kind that doesn't rush, doesn't beg for clarity, and doesn't fade quickly. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology tried to measure it. Wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Purpose-driven men don't explain themselves endlessly. They move. They act. They orient their lives toward something higher than approval, and that alone changes how you are perceived. You see, curiosity isn't sparked by loudness or performance, it's sparked by depth. When your days are structured around a personal mission, your energy stops leaking into external validation. You're no longer scanning rooms for reactions or measuring your worth through attention. You're occupied, grounded, directed. And paradoxically, this absence of need becomes presence. Seneca warned that he who lives for others is a slave to others. When you stop living to impress, you begin living in a way that invites intrigue. not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because your inner world has weight. From a Stoic lens, purpose is alignment with reason and virtue. It's not chaos disguised as ambition. It's order. And order is deeply attractive because it signals safety at a psychological level. A man who knows where he's going, even imperfectly, communicates stability without words. There's a calm in him, a sense that his emotions are governed, not suppressed, and his desires are chosen, not compulsive. That calm doesn't scream for attention, but it pulls it in. Curiosity grows in the space where predictability ends and meaning begins. When you lack purpose, conversations drift toward seeking affirmation. When you have purpose, conversations feel anchored even when silence enters. And silence, when carried by intention, is powerful. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Purpose-driven men are comfortable being misunderstood in the short term because they're committed to something long-term. That patience registers. It suggests depth yet to be discovered. And depth always invites exploration. There's also something important happening internally when you live this way. Your nervous system settles. You're not chasing emotional spikes. You're not hooked on outcomes. This emotional regulation prized by the Stoics creates contrast. You respond rather than react. You don't overshare to fill space. You don't rush to define yourself. Curiosity thrives when answers are earned, not handed out. And when your life has direction, you don't rush anyone toward conclusions about you. You let time do its work. Purpose also sharpens your boundaries. You say no more often. Not aggressively, not defensively, but cleanly. Taught that self-mastery is the foundation of all influence. When you respect your time and energy, others sense it. Boundaries create shape, and shape creates intrigue. A life without edges is forgettable. A life with structure invites questions. What drives you? What keeps you steady? Why are you unmoved by things that unsettle others? Now, this isn't about manipulation, despite the darker framing of psychology. It's about alignment. When your purpose is real, you're not trying to evoke curiosity. You're too busy living. That's what makes it effective. The Stoics never chased desire, they refined themselves. Desire followed naturally. As reminded himself, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Purpose refines thought. Refined thought shapes behavior. Behavior over time becomes character. And character is endlessly fascinating. To cultivate this, you need practice, not theory. Start with a daily purpose audit. Each morning, ask yourself one simple question. What am I moving toward today that has nothing to do with approval? Write it down. One sentence. That's enough. Then act in alignment with it, even imperfectly, especially imperfectly. Purpose isn't about flawless execution, it's about consistent direction. Another exercise is voluntary discomfort, a core Stoic discipline. Choose one small discomfort daily. Wake up earlier than you want. Train when you feel resistance. Sit in silence without stimulation. Seneca believed this prepared the mind for adversity and sharpened self-respect. When you prove to yourself that you can act without comfort, your confidence stops depending on external reassurance. That inner solidity changes how you carry yourself. People feel it before they understand it. You should also practice intentional silence. Not withdrawal, not avoidance, but restraint. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask whether clarity is necessary or whether ego is asking to be seen. Epictetus advised speaking less and doing more. Silence, paired with consistent action, builds an aura of depth. It leaves space for curiosity to grow naturally. Finally, reflect nightly. Ask, did I act according to my values today, or did I bend to be liked? No judgment, just observation. Stoicism is not about harsh self-criticism, it's about honest self-assessment. Over time, these reflections rewire your priorities. You become less reactive, more deliberate, less performative, more grounded. And that grounding is what evokes deeper curiosity, not tactics, Not lines, not strategies. Just a man who knows why he wakes up, where his energy goes, and what he refuses to betray in himself. When you live like that, you don't chase attention. You command it quietly. You don't seek fascination, you become it. Number 10, silence often communicates more power than words. Silence is often misunderstood. You were probably taught that power comes from saying the right thing at the right time in the right tone. That confidence is loud. That presence must announce itself. Stoicism gently dismantles that illusion. Wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Hidden in that line is a quieter truth. You don't need to react to be powerful. You don't need to explain yourself to be felt. And when you truly grasp this, something shifts in how others perceive you, especially at an emotional and psychological level. Silence, when chosen rather than forced, becomes a form of self-mastery. Not empty silence, not avoidance, but grounded, intentional restraint. You see, most people speak to fill space, to manage anxiety, to seek validation, to control how they're perceived. Stoicism asks you to reverse that impulse. Epictetus advised, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." When you stop rushing to respond, when you don't scramble to prove or impress, you signal something rare: inner sufficiency. And inner sufficiency is magnetic. Silence creates contrast. It slows the moment down. It invites curiosity. It forces others to project meaning instead of being spoon-fed explanations. This is not manipulation. It's discipline. It's you choosing not to leak energy unnecessarily. At a deeper psychological level, silence communicates emotional control. When you are calm enough not to react impulsively, you demonstrate that your emotions do not own you. Stoics believe that the person who governs himself is stronger than one who conquers a city. When you pause instead of rushing into words, you are practicing that governance in real time. You are telling the world without saying it, "I am not ruled by urgency." And urgency is often read as neediness. Silence dissolves that. It replaces it with steadiness, with gravity. There's also a subtle truth most people miss. Words are common. Silence is rare. Anyone can talk. Few can hold space without filling it. When you become comfortable in silence, you stop chasing reactions. You stop over-explaining. You stop defending your choices reflexively. Seneca warned, "He who talks too much is often the one who knows least." But beyond knowledge, excessive speech often reveals insecurity. Silence, on the other hand, implies that you trust your presence to speak for you. You don't need to convince. You allow others to arrive at their own conclusions. And psychologically, people value what they feel they discover themselves. Stoicism never encouraged passivity. This is important. Silence is not withdrawal, it's not emotional absence, it's precision. You speak when your words add weight, not noise. You hold back when words would cheapen the moment. That restraint creates depth. It makes your eventual words land harder, linger longer. When you speak less, you are listened to more. Not because you demand attention, but because you've trained people to notice when you finally choose to speak. You pay attention, you'll notice how silence also protects your inner world. Every unnecessary explanation drains you. Every reactive comment pulls you outward. Stoicism teaches you to return inward again and again. To anchor yourself in what you can control, your judgments, your actions, your responses. Silence becomes a shield. It keeps your intentions private. It prevents your plans from being diluted by outside opinions. As Seneca said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Choosing silence is an act of mastery. There's something else happening beneath the surface. Silence invites projection. When you don't reveal everything, the mind of the other person fills in the gaps. This is basic human psychology. Mystery isn't created by tricks, it's created by boundaries. When you don't overshare, when you do narrate every thought, you allow space for intrigue. Stoicism aligns perfectly with this because it values inner life over outward display. You don't perform your depth, you live it. and depth when quiet is often felt more intensely. Now this requires courage. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind will urge you to speak, to clarify, to smooth things over. Resist that impulse, not with arrogance but with composure. Remind yourself of Epictetus' words. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Sometimes silence will be misinterpreted. Let it be. Stoicism teaches you to release the need to control perception. You are responsible for your character, not for how it's interpreted in every moment. To embody this, you need practice. Start small. Practice pausing before you respond, even when you know exactly what to say. Count a slow breath. Feel your body. Let your words rise from calm instead of reflex. Another exercise, reduce your explanations by half. Say what is necessary, then stop. Notice how often the urge to add more comes from discomfort rather than clarity. Train yourself to sit with that discomfort. It will pass. What remains is presence. You can also practice intentional silence daily. Spend time without consuming noise. No talking, no input, just observation. Often retreated inward, reminding himself that tranquility comes from within. This habit strengthens your comfort with quiet, so silence no longer feels like a void you must fill. It becomes a place you can stand firmly. Another powerful exercise is restraint under emotional charge. When something triggers you, say nothing at first, not forever, just long enough to regain sovereignty over your response. Ask yourself, is speaking right now an act of wisdom or an act of impulse? Stoicism demands honesty here. Silence, when chosen consciously, is never weakness. It is delayed strength. Over time, this changes how you carry yourself. Your energy becomes less scattered. Your words become fewer but sharper. Your presence feels heavier, calmer, more grounded. You stop chasing validation through expression. You let silence do part of the work. And paradoxically, the less you try to be seen, the more you are felt. Remember this, silence is not about withholding yourself. It's about revealing yourself selectively. Stoicism is not about suppression, it's about alignment. When your inner world is ordered, your outer expression naturally simplifies. You don't need constant words to assert your value. As reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Often, being one requires no words at all. So take this with you. Let silence become a habit, not a tactic. Let it ground you, not distance you. Speak when your words serve truth, clarity, or virtue. Be silent when they would only serve ego or fear. In that balance, you'll find a quiet authority that no volume can replace. If you've made it this far, understand this. What you've just learned isn't about manipulation, tricks, or chasing approval. It's about mastery. Stoicism teaches that the man who controls his emotions, his reactions, and his purpose becomes magnetic without trying. When you stop seeking validation, you start commanding respect. When you remain calm in chaos, you stand out in a world addicted to emotional noise. Most men will hear these ideas and forget them tomorrow, but a few will apply them, and those are the ones who quietly win in life, attraction, and self-respect. Female psychology doesn't respond to neediness or performance. It responds to strength, certainty, and emotional discipline. And that's exactly what Stoicism gives you. So the real question is this: will you go back to old habits, or will you walk forward with a mindset that puts you ahead of 99% of men? If this video challenged your perspective, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what stood out the most. More importantly, revisit these principles, live them daily, and watch how everything, especially how people respond to you, begins to change. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. What if I told you that the men women feel instantly drawn to aren't always the tallest, richest, or most conventionally attractive, but the ones who think, move, and carry themselves differently? The ones who walk into a room and without saying much command attention. The ones who don't chase validation, yet somehow receive it effortlessly. Most men are taught to do more, talk more, impress more, prove more. But female psychology works in a far subtler way. Attraction is triggered in seconds, often before a single word is spoken. And once you understand what's happening beneath the surface, you'll realize why some men are naturally magnetic, while others are endlessly overlooked despite their efforts. In this video, we'll break down the psychological signals women subconsciously respond to, the Stoic principles that shape unshakable masculine presence, and the hidden behaviors that separate men who are respected from men who are ignored. This isn't about manipulation. It's about alignment, becoming the kind of man whose inner world creates outer attraction. Watch this video till the very end because the final insight ties everything together. And once you see it, you'll never look at attraction or yourself the same way again. Number 1. Emotional calm under pressure. Emotional calm under pressure is one of those qualities people feel before they can explain it. You don't announce it. You don't perform it. It's sensed. Stoicism has always pointed to this quiet strength as a mark of real power. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That line isn't poetic decoration, it's instruction. When you stay steady while everything around you feels urgent, noisy, or tense, you communicate something deeper than confidence. You communicate self-command. And self-command is instantly attractive because it signals safety, maturity, and depth without needing words. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. They react quickly, explain excessively, defend impulsively. You can feel the internal chaos behind their behavior. Stoicism invites you to step out of that pattern. Emotional calm doesn't mean you don't feel pressure. It means you don't let pressure dictate your behavior. You feel the surge, the heat, the tension, but you choose your response. That choice is where attraction begins, not because it's calculated, but because it's rare. A calm man in a stressful moment stands out the same way still water stands out in a storm. There's a psychological reason this matters so much. Emotional volatility signals unpredictability. Predictability at a deep level is associated with trust. When you remain composed, you show that your inner world is ordered. Seneca put it simply, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." That power is felt immediately. It shows in your packing, your tone, your posture, your timing. You're not rushing to control the moment. You're allowing the moment to unfold while staying rooted in yourself. That groundedness is calming to others, and calm is contagious. Stoicism teaches that external events are neutral. It is your judgment that creates disturbance. When you internalize this, pressure stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like information. You don't need to dominate situations or escape them. You meet them evenly. This emotional evenness creates contrast. While others tighten up, you soften. While others escalate, you slow down. That contrast draws attention without effort. It says, "I've been here before internally, and I know how to stay steady." What makes this especially compelling is that emotional calm cannot be faked for long. People sense authenticity. They feel when calm comes from suppression versus mastery. Stoicism doesn't teach suppression. It teaches understanding. You observe your emotions instead of being swept away by them. Epictetus advised, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." When you live by this, pressure loses its power to hijack you. And when pressure can't hijack you, neither can fear, insecurity, or the need to impress. This calmness changes how you speak. Your words become fewer, but they carry more weight. You don't interrupt urgency with urgency. You answer intensity with steadiness. That doesn't make you passive, it makes you deliberate. You respond from choice, not reflex. And reflex is what most people are trapped in. When you step outside that trap, your presence feels different. It feels mature. It feels safe. It feels reliable. These are qualities that register instantly, even if no one consciously labels them. There's also something deeply attractive about a man who doesn't crumble under emotional load. It suggests that he can handle complexity without collapsing into drama. Stoicism frames this as resilience of the soul, reminded himself daily to expect difficulty, not resent it. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. When you embody this mindset, pressure stops being something to escape and becomes something you absorb and move through. That absorption is felt as strength. To cultivate this, you need habits, not ideas. One powerful practice is emotional labeling. When pressure arises, silently name what you feel without judgment. Tension, irritation, uncertainty. Numbing creates distance. Distance creates choice. Another practice is delayed response. Train yourself not to respond immediately when emotions spike. Even a brief pause reasserts control. You're telling yourself, I decide when and how I respond. That decision-making is the core of emotional calm. Breathing is another Stoic-aligned tool, even if the ancient texts didn't call it that directly. Slow, intentional breathing anchors you in the present. It reminds your nervous system that you are not under threat. Seneca often spoke about returning to simplicity when the mind is agitated. The breath is simplicity itself. Use it. Let it slow your body so your mind can follow. You should also practice voluntary discomfort. This is a classic Stoic exercise. By choosing mild stress intentionally, you train yourself not to panic when stress appears unexpectedly. Cold, silence, restraint, effort, these sharpen your emotional discipline. Epictetus believed that training the mind required friction. Without it, calm is fragile. With it, calm becomes durable. Another essential habit is reducing emotional leakage. Not every feeling needs expression. Not every thought needs a voice. Stoicism teaches discernment. Ask yourself, does expressing this increase clarity or just release tension? If it's the latter, choose containment. Containment builds strength. Over time, you'll notice that pressure feels lighter because you're no longer amplifying it through reaction. What's important is that this calm is not about appearing unbothered. It's about actually being centered. People can sense the difference. One is performance, the other is presence. Presence is felt instantly. It makes others lean in rather than brace themselves. It creates a sense of psychological safety that doesn't depend on charm or words. As you grow into this, you'll notice a shift. Situations that once rattled you now feel manageable. Your emotional baseline stabilizes. You stop chasing control over outcomes and focus on control over yourself. That focus simplifies everything. As said, nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. When you carry that retreat within you, pressure loses its authority. Take this seriously. Emotional calm is not a personality trait, it's a practice. Choose it daily. Train it intentionally. Let it reshape how you move through tension. You don't need to dominate the room. You don't need to prove strength. Calm under pressure does that for you, quietly, instantly, and unmistakably. Number 2, clear self-respect and boundaries. Clear self-respect and boundaries are felt before they are understood. You don't have to announce them. You don't have to defend them. They radiate quietly from how you carry yourself, from what you tolerate and what you don't. Stoicism understood this long before modern psychology put language to it. Epictetus said, "If you want to be respected, first respect yourself." That sentence is simple, almost blunt, yet it contains a force most people never fully access. When you respect yourself without apology, you stop negotiating your worth. And the moment you stop negotiating, something in the dynamic shifts instantly. You can sense it when a man knows where he ends and where others begin. There's no desperation to be liked, no silent bargaining, No hidden fear of loss driving his behavior. His boundaries aren't walls, they're definitions. They tell the world, and more importantly tell him, what aligns with his values and what doesn't. Stoicism teaches that your peace comes from living in accordance with your principles, not from external approval. Reminded himself daily, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Boundaries are simply that idea lived out in real time. They are integrity in motion. What draws attention at a psychological level is not control over others, but control over yourself. When you don't overextend, overexplain, or overinvest prematurely, you communicate stability. Stability feels safe. It feels grounded. And paradoxically, it feels exciting because it's rare. Most people operate from fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of missing out, fear of being alone. Stoicism urges you to step out of fear and into reason. When you do, your actions slow down. They become deliberate, and deliberateness carries weight. Self-respect changes how you respond to tension. You don't rush to fix, chase, or prove. You don't abandon your rhythm to match someone else's uncertainty. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here doesn't mean confrontation or dominance. It means the courage to stand by your standards even when it costs you comfort, especially then. Boundaries are tested in moments of discomfort, not ease. Every time you honor them, you reinforce your own sense of worth. That internal reinforcement is felt externally, even if no words are exchanged. There's something deeply attractive about someone who is not easily shaken, not rigid, not cold, but anchored. When you have clear boundaries, you're not constantly scanning for signals or approval. You're present. You listen without losing yourself. You engage without dissolving into the interaction. Stoicism calls this inner citadel, the place within you that remains untouched by external chaos. When that place is strong, you stop chasing outcomes. You focus on conduct. And conduct is what builds quiet confidence. It's important to understand that boundaries are not about control or punishment. They're not ultimatums, they're clarity. You're not trying to change anyone. You're simply deciding what you will participate in. This distinction matters. Stoicism teaches you to accept what is outside your control and to govern what is within it. Your time, your energy, your attention, your standards. When you protect these without guilt, you signal maturity. You show that your life is already full, already structured around purpose rather than reaction. Most people weaken their boundaries because they confuse intensity with connection. Stoicism cuts through that confusion. Real connection doesn't require self-betrayal. It doesn't demand that you shrink your needs or abandon your values. When you respect yourself, you no longer tolerate dynamics that erode you. Not loudly, not dramatically. You simply disengage from what doesn't align. That calm detachment is powerful because it comes from abundance, not bitterness. Now this takes practice. Your nervous system may resist at first. You might feel the urge to justify yourself, to soften your no, to explain your standards so they're more acceptable. Notice that urge. That's where the work is. Epictetus warned, if you seek truth, you will not seek victory by dishonorable means. Seeking approval at the expense of self-respect is one of those dishonorable means. Let the discomfort be there. It's temporary. What you gain is permanent. A practical exercise is this: define your non-negotiables in private. Not what sounds impressive, but what genuinely matters to you. Write them down. Then practice honoring them internally before you ever enforce them externally. Another exercise is restraint. When something feels off, don't react immediately. Pause. Ask yourself whether responding would strengthen or weaken your self-respect. Often, silence or distance is the most aligned response. Stoicism values restraint not as suppression, but as wisdom. You can also train boundaries through small daily choices. Don't say yes when you mean no. Don't overcommit to earn validation. Don't explain past the point of clarity. These micro-decisions shape your identity. Wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are rooted in self-respect, your actions will naturally follow. Over time, this becomes effortless. You no longer perform confidence, you embody it. What makes this instantly felt is consistency. Anyone can set a boundary once. Few maintain them without resentment or collapse. Stoicism teaches endurance. It teaches you to stay aligned even when it's inconvenient. When your boundaries are steady, not reactive, they communicate strength. They say you trust yourself enough not to grasp. That trust is contagious. Ultimately, clear self-respect and boundaries free you. They remove the constant inner negotiation. They allow you to show up fully without losing yourself. You become calm, grounded, and unmistakably solid. You stop trying to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. As Seneca said, no one can live happily who has regard only to himself and turns everything to his own advantage. Self-respect isn't selfishness. It's the foundation that allows genuine connection without self-erasure. So take this seriously, not urgently, calmly. Build your boundaries like you build character, one choice at a time. Let them be quiet, firm, and non-negotiable. When you live this way, attraction stops being something you chase. It becomes a natural byproduct of who you are. Number 3, purpose-driven lifestyle. A purpose-driven lifestyle changes the way you move through the world, and people feel it long before you say a word. You don't need to announce your goals or justify your direction. Purpose has a weight to it, a quiet pull. The Stoics understood this deeply. Reminded himself, at dawn when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being, not as a performer, not as someone chasing approval, as someone aligned with a duty larger than momentary pleasure. When you live like this, attraction stops being something you chase and becomes something that happens as a side effect of alignment. You can sense when a man is drifting and when he is anchored. Drift looks like reacting to everything, changing direction based on moods, opinions, or validation. Anchoring looks like calm momentum. A purpose-driven life gives you that anchor. It sharpens your decisions. It filters your attention. You stop being everywhere at once and start being somewhere specific. And psychologically, that specificity is powerful. Purpose signals self-trust. It says you've chosen a path and you're willing to walk it without constant reassurance. Epictetus put it simply, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That internal agreement with yourself is felt externally. When you live with purpose, your energy changes. You're less available for trivial distractions because your time matters to you. You're less reactive because your emotions aren't steering the wheel. This isn't rigidity, it's clarity. And clarity is attractive because it creates safety at a psychological level. Not safety in a passive sense, but in the sense that you are predictable in values, not in behavior. People don't have to guess what you stand for. They can feel it. Purpose gives you a center of gravity, and everything else organizes itself around it. A purpose-driven lifestyle also removes desperation from your actions. You're no longer trying to extract meaning from attention, approval, or outcomes you can't control. Stoicism teaches that desire for externals is the root of disturbance. Seneca warned, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. When you know your port, you stop panicking about every wave. You don't cling. You don't overinvest too early. You don't contort yourself to be chosen. You are already chosen by your own commitment to something meaningful. That self-selection is what changes how others respond to you. Purpose also disciplines your mind. It gives you a reason to say no. No to distractions. No to habits that drain you. No to versions of yourself that feel convenient but hollow. This discipline shows up in subtle ways, in how you listen without needing to impress, in how you speak without oversharing, in how you walk away from what doesn't align without bitterness. Stoicism is not about coldness, it's about order. When your inner world is ordered, your outer presence becomes calm and grounded. And calm confidence is far more compelling than performative charisma. There's another layer here that's often ignored. Purpose gives your suffering meaning. Everyone struggles, everyone faces resistance. But without purpose, resistance feels like punishment. With purpose, it feels like refinement. Wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When you embody this mindset, your demeanor changes. You're less cynical, less resentful, more resilient. That resilience reads as emotional strength. You don't collapse under pressure or seek rescue from discomfort. You carry yourself as someone who can endure, adapt, and continue. That endurance is deeply attractive at a psychological level because it signals long-term stability. Living with purpose also sharpens your presence in the moment. You're not half there, half elsewhere. You're not scanning for the next hit of validation. You're engaged because your life has direction beyond the immediate interaction. This makes your attention feel valuable. When you give it, it means something. When you withdraw it, there's no drama, just continuity. Stoicism teaches you to invest your attention where it aligns with virtue and intention, not impulse. Over time, this trains you to become selective rather than reactive. To build this, you need daily practices, not abstract ideas. Start with a simple but uncomfortable exercise. Write down what you are moving toward and what you are moving away from. Not what sounds impressive, but what feels necessary. Purpose doesn't have to be loud. It has to be honest. Then ask yourself each morning, what is one action today that honors this direction? One action. That's enough. Purpose is built through consistency, not grand declarations. Another practice is negative visualization, a classic Stoic tool. Imagine a life where you abandon your direction entirely, where days blur together without intention. Sit with that image briefly, not to scare yourself, but to sharpen gratitude for the path you are choosing. Seneca believed this exercise strengthened resolve and reduced attachment to trivial comforts. It reminds you why purpose matters. You should also practice voluntary discomfort. Choose small, controlled challenges that reinforce self-command. This isn't about punishment, it's about proof. Proof that you can act according to principle rather than comfort. Each time you do this, your self-respect grows. And self-respect is the foundation of genuine confidence. You don't need to project it. It leaks out naturally through posture, tone, and patience. A purpose-driven lifestyle doesn't make you rigid or joyless. It makes you selective. You still enjoy life, but you don't worship pleasure. You appreciate connection, but you don't depend on it to feel whole. Epictetus reminded us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Purpose works the same way. You don't advertise it, you live it. And living it reshapes how you are perceived without you trying to manage that perception. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You're less anxious about outcomes, less invested in being liked, more focused on being aligned. And paradoxically, that alignment is what draws people in. Not because you're trying to attract, but because you're no longer chasing. Purpose frees you from that chase. It replaces need with direction, noise with clarity, restlessness with quiet momentum. So commit, not perfectly, not loudly, just consistently. Choose a direction that demands growth and integrity. Act on it daily, even when no one is watching, especially then. Let your life speak before you do. As advised, concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. When you live this way, attraction stops being a strategy. It becomes a reflection of who you are becoming. Number 4, confident body language. Confidence is felt before it is understood. Long before you speak, long before you explain who you are or what you believe, your body has already delivered the message. Stoicism understood this centuries ago, even if it never used modern psychological terms. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Your body is often the first place where that inner decision shows up, not in exaggerated gestures or forced dominance, but in quiet alignment. When your body moves as if it trusts itself, others feel that trust without needing evidence. Most people try to manufacture confidence from the outside in. They think confidence is something you perform. Stoicism flips that completely. Confidence is not a pose, it's the absence of inner conflict. When you stop fighting yourself internally, your body settles naturally. Your movements slow down, your posture opens. You stop shrinking or compensating. This is why confident body language doesn't feel desperate or rushed. It feels grounded, calm, almost indifferent to approval. And that indifference, paradoxically, draws attention. You don't need to memorize a list of power moves. In fact, chasing techniques usually backfires because the body can't convincingly fake what the mind hasn't accepted. Wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are frantic, self-doubting, or approval-seeking, your body will betray that. Shoulders tense, breathing shallow, movements sharp or hesitant. But when your thoughts are anchored in self-respect, the body follows effortlessly. Confidence then becomes less about doing more and more about undoing what doesn't belong. Confident body language begins with stillness. Stillness is underrated. People who are uncomfortable with themselves constantly adjust, fidget, rush. Stillness signals safety within. It says you're not trying to escape the moment. You're not bracing for impact. You're here, fully. That presence is deeply attractive because it suggests emotional stability. Stoicism prized this quality. Seneca warned against being carried away by appearances, urging instead a composed and measured way of being. When your body reflects composure, it reassures without saying a word. Posture matters, but not in the way you've been told. It's not about puffing your chest or forcing your spine into rigidity. That's tension disguised as confidence. True confidence feels relaxed yet upright, grounded through the feet, balanced, not stiff. Think of posture as an agreement between strength and ease. When you stand or sit like you belong where you are, you communicate self-acceptance. And self-acceptance is the root of confidence. Not arrogance, not dominance, acceptance. Your pace also tells a story. Rushed movements suggest urgency, and urgency often reads as need. Stoicism teaches you to remove unnecessary urgency from your life. Reminded himself daily that most things are not as serious as the mind makes them. When you move more slowly, deliberately, you signal that you are not controlled by pressure. You are not reacting. You are choosing. That choice, embodied physically, is felt as confidence. Eye contact is another extension of this inner order. Confident eye contact isn't intense or invasive. It's steady, comfortable, unafraid of silence. You don't stare to dominate and you don't look away to escape. You simply remain. This reflects what Epictetus taught about courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision not to be ruled by it. When your gaze is calm, your body communicates emotional resilience. You're not scanning for approval, you're present. Breathing is often overlooked, yet it is foundational. Shallow breathing keeps the body in a low-level state of anxiety. Deep, controlled breathing signals safety to the nervous system. Stoics practiced breath awareness long before it was popular. Slow breathing settles your body, which then moves with more assurance. Your gestures become smoother. Your voice, when you speak, carries more weight. But even before you speak, your breathing rhythm influences how others experience your presence. Here's the key Stoic insight most people miss. Confident body language is not about attracting others. It's about not abandoning yourself. When you stop contorting your body to manage how you're perceived, confidence emerges naturally. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Much physical tension comes from anticipating judgment. Release that anticipation. Let your body exist without apology. That alone changes everything. To build this, you need practice, not theory. One exercise is daily posture awareness. Several times a day, check in with your body, not to criticize it, but to notice. Are your shoulders raised? Is your jaw tight? Is your breath shallow? Gently release. No force, just permission. This trains your body to return to a neutral, confident baseline. Another exercise is deliberate movement. For short periods, slow down everything you do. Walking, sitting, standing, not theatrically but consciously. Feel each movement. This builds control and presence. Over time, your default pace becomes calmer, and calm is often mistaken for confidence because it usually is. You can also practice grounded stillness. Stand or sit without moving for a minute or two. No phone, no distraction. Let the urge to adjust pass. This strengthens your tolerance for being seen without performing. Stoicism emphasizes endurance of discomfort when it serves growth. This is a physical form of that endurance. A powerful internal exercise is aligning thought with posture. When you catch yourself slouching or collapsing inward, don't just straighten up. Ask what thought accompanies that posture. Self-doubt, comparison, anticipation. Replace it with a stoic reminder. Often told himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Let that thought inform your body. Notice how it naturally adjusts. Over time, confident body language stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. Your body reflects an inner agreement. You are enough as you are, and you don't need to rush, impress, or prove. That agreement is felt instantly by others, not because it's flashy, but because it's rare. Remember, confidence is quiet. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It allows itself to be noticed if it is. Stoicism never asked you to dominate the room. It asked you to dominate yourself. When you do that consistently, your body becomes an honest expression of inner order. And that honesty is what draws people in, often before they even realize why. So don't chase confident body language. Remove what blocks it. Release tension. Slow down. Breathe. Stand where you are without apology. Let your body reflect the same discipline you're building in your mind. In that alignment, attraction happens naturally, not because you tried, but because you stopped getting in your own way. Number 5, mystery and restraint in communication. There's a quiet force that most people never train, never respect, and never realize is shaping how they're perceived within seconds. It's not your looks, not your words, not even your confidence in the way it's usually taught. It's mystery paired with restraint. And Stoicism has been pointing to this for centuries. Wrote, "Let your actions be your words." That single line explains more about attraction than endless techniques ever could. When you don't rush to reveal everything, when you don't spill your thoughts at the first opening, you create gravity. You become someone who is felt before being fully understood. And the human mind, especially at an emotional level, is drawn to what it cannot immediately decode. Most men talk too much because they believe clarity builds connection. In reality, excess clarity often kills intrigue. When you explain yourself too quickly, justify your intentions, or narrate your inner world in real time, you remove the space where attraction grows. Stoicism teaches you to govern that impulse. Epictetus warned, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice what's missing there. No announcement, no performance, no verbal rehearsal. You act from alignment, not from the need to be seen acting. That restraint signals inner stability, and inner stability is deeply attractive. Mystery doesn't mean being distant or cold. It means being contained. It means you don't leak your energy everywhere. You choose when to speak, what to reveal, and what to keep for yourself. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you don't rush to fill silence, silence begins to work for you. The mind on the other side starts leaning in. Curiosity activates. Attention sharpens. This isn't manipulation. It's psychological economy. You're no longer spending words to buy approval. You're letting presence do the work. Stoicism frames this as self-command. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Restraint in communication is bravery. It takes courage not to over-explain. It takes discipline not to react instantly. It takes strength to trust that you don't need to prove yourself verbally. When you pause before responding, when you allow a moment of stillness instead of rushing to say something impressive, you show that you're not governed by anxiety. And anxiety is the fastest way to drain attraction. Calm, on the other hand, amplifies it. There's also something powerful happening internally when you practice restraint. You stop outsourcing your sense of worth to reactions. You stop measuring yourself by how well your words land. You become more grounded, more selective, more intentional, reminded himself daily that external validation is unstable and unreliable. When you internalize that, your communication naturally simplifies. You stop trying to manage perception. You let it unfold. And paradoxically, that's when people become most attentive to you. Mystery emerges when you don't overexpose your inner life, not because you're hiding, but because you respect it. Stoicism never encouraged emotional dumping. It encouraged clarity of thought and restraint of impulse. When you speak only what's necessary, when you leave some things unsaid, you allow imagination to participate. And imagination is far more engaging than information. The mind is wired to complete patterns. When you don't present the full picture immediately, interest sustains itself. You may notice resistance to this at first. Your mind will urge you to talk more, explain more, fix more, pause there. That urge often comes from fear of being misunderstood or forgotten. Stoicism asks you to release that fear. Epictetus put it plainly: if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you. Silence in moments of uncertainty isn't weakness, it's composure, and composure is unmistakable. Restraint also sharpens your listening. When you're not busy preparing your next line, you become more present. That presence is felt. People sense when they're being truly observed rather than managed. An observation without immediate reaction creates a subtle emotional safety. You're not trying to steer the moment, you're allowing it. That allowance feels rare in a world addicted to noise and constant self-expression. To train this, you need deliberate practice. Start by reducing unnecessary speech. Ask yourself before speaking, does this add clarity or does it add clutter? If it's clutter, let it go. Practice ending your statements without adding a second explanation. Say less, then stop. Feel the discomfort. That discomfort is where growth lives. Another exercise is the pause. Before responding, take a breath. Not to be clever, just to be grounded. Over time, this pause becomes natural, and your words begin to emerge from calm rather than urgency. You can also practice controlled disclosure. Notice how often you reveal things automatically. Instead, choose. Reveal slowly. Let trust and timing guide expression rather than impulse. Seneca warned against scattering oneself too widely, saying that a man who is everywhere is nowhere. The same applies to communication. When you scatter your thoughts freely, they lose impact. When you concentrate them, they gain force. This approach changes how you're perceived without you trying to change anything outwardly. Your energy becomes steadier, your presence more contained. You stop chasing moments. You let moments come to you. And when you do speak, people listen, not because you demand attention, but because you've trained them to associate your words with intention. Remember, mystery isn't about pretending to be something you're not. It's about not explaining yourself prematurely. Restraint isn't about suppression. It's about timing. Stoicism teaches you that timing is wisdom. Wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Communication is one of the clearest places to practice that power. So take this seriously. Speak with purpose. Pause with confidence. Let silence stand when words would weaken the moment. Allow curiosity to breathe. Let restraint refine you. Over time, you'll notice something subtle but undeniable. The less you chase attraction through words, the more naturally it follows your presence. And that's not a trick, that's alignment. Number 6, non-neediness and independence. Non-neediness and independence aren't traits you perform. They're states you inhabit, and people can feel the difference instantly. You already know this on some level. You felt how different it is to want something versus to chase it. Stoicism has always warned against attachment that turns into dependence. Epictetus said it plainly: if you desire something outside your control, you will be disappointed. When your sense of worth hinges on being chosen, approved, or desired, you leak power. When your life feels full without permission from anyone else, something subtle but undeniable shifts in how you're perceived. Neediness is not about desire. Desire is human. Neediness is about outsourcing your emotional stability. It's when your mood, your confidence, your sense of direction rises and falls based on someone else's attention. Independence, on the other hand, is when your center of gravity stays inside you. You still care, you still feel, but you are not grasping. You are not silently asking to be completed. And psychologically, this is deeply attractive because it signals strength without aggression, confidence without noise. Stoicism teaches you to want without clinging, to value without attaching your identity to the outcome. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Non-neediness is simply the lived expression of that idea. When you don't rush, don't over-explain, don't seek constant reassurance, you communicate that your inner world is stable. Stability feels safe. And safety is often misinterpreted as excitement's opposite. But in truth, it's what allows attraction to deepen instead of burn out. Independence also signals that your life has direction, not a rigid plan but a sense of movement. When you are anchored to your own goals, values, and routines, you stop orbiting around external validation. You're not waiting to be chosen. You are choosing how you spend your time, energy, and attention. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you scatter yourself trying to be everything to everyone, you dilute your presence. Independence concentrates it. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you'll be fine either way, that you can walk away without bitterness, that you don't bargain with your self-respect. This isn't emotional coldness, it's emotional maturity. Stoicism never taught detachment from people, it taught detachment from outcomes. You show up fully, but you don't collapse if things don't go your way. That balance is rare, and rarity creates value. You may notice that non-neediness changes how you speak and how you listen. You stop filling silence with nervous words. You stop chasing responses. You allow space. Space creates polarity. Space allows curiosity to grow. When you're independent, you're not trying to manage impressions. You're present. And presence, when it's grounded rather than hungry, is felt immediately. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. Your mind will try to pull you back into old patterns. It will whisper that you'll lose connection if you don't prove yourself, if you don't stay available, if you don't show constant interest. Stoicism challenges that fear directly. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Decide who you are before the moment tests you. Decide that your worth is not negotiable. Non-neediness also shows up in boundaries. You don't chase what doesn't choose you. You don't linger where you're not respected, not out of pride but out of alignment. Independence is saying, I value connection but not at the cost of my peace. When you hold that line calmly, without resentment, you communicate self-trust. And self-trust is contagious. People respond to it instinctively. There's another layer to this that often goes unnoticed. Independence gives you emotional generosity. When you're not needy, you can give attention without demanding it back. You can appreciate without trying to own. You can step back without playing games. This relaxed generosity feels refreshing in a world full of tension and hidden agendas. Stoicism calls this virtue. Modern psychology calls it secure grounding. The labels don't matter, the effect does. To cultivate this, you need habits, not affirmations. Start with this exercise. Spend time every day strengthening something that has nothing to do with being admired. something internal: discipline, skill, physical effort, reflection. When your life feels rich on its own, neediness naturally dissolves. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Reduce craving by expanding your inner resources. Another practice: delay emotional reactions. When you feel the urge to seek reassurance, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing right now? Then remind yourself that you were whole before this moment and will be whole after it. This isn't denial, it's perspective. Stoicism is built on perspective training. The more you practice it, the calmer you become under emotional pressure. You can also train independence by learning to enjoy absence. Not as punishment, not as withdrawal, but as neutrality. When you're comfortable alone with your thoughts, you stop using others to escape yourself. Often reflected in solitude, grounding himself in reason and nature. You don't need a mountain or a retreat. You need consistency. Quiet moments where you don't distract yourself from yourself. Pay attention to how often you explain your intentions. Reduce it. Let your actions speak. Over-explaining is often a hidden form of seeking approval. Independence trusts that clarity doesn't require constant narration. This restraint adds weight to everything you do say, and weight creates impact. Over time, non-neediness reshapes your identity. You stop chasing emotional highs. You stop fearing emotional lows. You become steady, calm, selective. You don't rush connections and you don't cling to them either. You allow things to unfold. That patience is powerful. As said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Even uncertainty becomes something you can stand inside without panicking. This is what attracts at a deep level. Not perfection, not dominance, but grounded independence. A man who wants connection but doesn't require it to feel complete. A man who enjoys closeness without losing himself. When you embody that, you don't need tactics. You don't need performance. Your presence does the work. So take action, not outwardly first, but inwardly. Build a life you don't need to escape from. Strengthen your inner posture. Practice emotional restraint. Choose self-respect over short-term reassurance. Let independence become your default, not your defense. And remember, as Stoicism teaches again and again, when you stop chasing what you think you need, you often become what others are drawn to effortlessly. Number 7. Decisive behavior. Decisive behavior is one of those qualities you feel before you fully understand it. You sense it instantly. Stoicism has always pointed toward this inner firmness, this refusal to drift. Wrote, "Let your actions be few but decisive." That single line reveals something most people overlook. Clarity is attractive because it signals inner order. When you move decisively, you communicate that your mind is not crowded with doubt, fear, or the need for constant reassurance. You show, without announcing it, that you know where you stand. And that steadiness creates a quiet pull. Indecision leaks energy. It fragments presence. When you hesitate endlessly, when you second-guess every move, you subtly communicate that you don't trust yourself. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Epictetus reminds you, if you want to improve, stop being concerned with being thought foolish. Decisiveness is not about always being right. It's about being willing to choose, to commit, and to accept responsibility for the outcome. That willingness signals courage. And courage, even when calm and understated, is deeply compelling. You don't become decisive by trying to impress. You become decisive by clarifying your values. The Stoics believe that once your principles are clear, action becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. When you know what matters, hesitation fades. You stop outsourcing decisions to the opinions of others. You stop scanning for approval before moving. Instead, you act from alignment. That alignment is felt. People are drawn to those who seem internally anchored, because certainty is rare in a world addicted to reassurance. Decisive behavior also communicates emotional leadership. When you are able to choose without over-explaining, without wavering, you create psychological safety, not by controlling but by grounding. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Indecision is often just imagined fear stretched out over time. Decisiveness cuts through that. It says, "I can handle the consequences." That message resonates far beyond words. It's felt in your posture, your timing, your tone, even in your silences. What's important to understand is that decisiveness is not aggression. It's not force. It's calm commitment. The Stoics never praised recklessness. They praised reasoned action taken without delay. You don't rush, but you also don't stall. You listen, you assess, and then you move. That rhythm is powerful because it blends thoughtfulness with confidence. It tells others that your choices are not random, yet they are not paralyzed by overthinking either. You may notice that most people avoid decisive action because they fear losing options. Stoicism reframes this completely. Freedom is not having endless choices. Freedom is having the courage to choose one and walk it fully. Reminded himself, do what nature demands, get on with it. When you act decisively, you embody this principle. You don't linger in mental loops. You respect your time and your energy. And when you respect your own time, others instinctively do too. There is also something deeply attractive about decisiveness because it reduces chaos. Humans are drawn to order even unconsciously. When you demonstrate that your inner world is structured, that your thoughts don't spiral endlessly, you become a point of stability. You're not pulled in every direction. You're not constantly adjusting yourself to fit expectations. You choose and you stand by that choice. Even when you later refine it, you don't disown it. That consistency builds trust at a psychological level. Now this trait is built, not declared. You cultivate decisiveness through daily discipline. Start by setting small, non-negotiable decisions for yourself and honoring them. Decide when you will act, then act. No renegotiation. This trains your nervous system to associate choice with follow-through instead of anxiety. Another practice is limiting the time you give yourself to decide. Stoics understood that prolonged deliberation often weakens resolve. Give your mind a clear window, then close it. Choice made. Move forward. A powerful exercise is to ask yourself, what would I choose if I trusted myself? Sit with that question. Not the choice that avoids discomfort, not the choice that looks safest, the choice that aligns with your principles. Write it down, then act on it deliberately. Each time you do this, you reinforce self-trust, and self-trust is the root of decisiveness. Another practice is learning to accept imperfection. Indecisive people often wait for certainty. Stoicism teaches you that certainty is an illusion. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen." When you internalize this, you stop waiting for perfect clarity. You act with the information you have, adjust when needed, and remain composed either way. That composure is what people respond to, not flawless outcomes. Decisiveness also sharpens your presence. When you stop hesitating, your body language changes. Your movements become cleaner. Your speech becomes more economical. You don't trail off. You don't overqualify. You say what you mean and then you stop. This restraint gives weight to your words, and weight creates impact. Stoicism is full of reminders that excess weakens force. Decisiveness is restraint applied to action. Over time, this becomes part of your identity. You are no longer someone who drifts or waits to be nudged. You initiate, you choose, you move. And you do so without drama, without performance, just quiet certainty. Captured this beautifully when he wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness." That seriousness is not heaviness. It's sincerity. It's intent. Let this be your standard, not loud dominance, not performative confidence, but grounded decisiveness rooted in self-respect. Decide what you tolerate. Decide what you pursue. Decide when to act and when to walk away. Each decision, however small, reinforces the message that you are led from within, and that inner leadership is felt instantly. So start today. Choose one area of your life where you've been waiting, circling, postponing. Make a decision, commit to it fully, accept the outcome calmly, repeat tomorrow. Over time, decisiveness will no longer feel like effort. It will feel like alignment. And alignment, more than anything else, is what people are drawn to before a single word is spoken. Number 8. Consistency between words and actions. There's a quiet test happening every time you speak. Not a loud one, not something anyone announces. It's subtle, almost invisible, yet decisive. Do your words line up with who you are when no one is listening? Stoicism has always insisted that character is revealed not by what you claim, but by what you repeatedly do. Epictetus put it plainly: don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That single line exposes why consistency between words and actions carries such immediate psychological weight. You don't have to declare strength, integrity, or confidence. When your behavior quietly confirms your words, those qualities are felt without effort. Most people talk more than they live. They describe intentions they haven't earned yet. They promise states of being they haven't stabilized. And on a psychological level, this creates friction. The mind detects mismatch instinctively. When what you say and what you do don't align, even slightly, trust weakens. Not dramatically, slowly, almost politely. Stoicism teaches you to close that gap, not by speaking better, but by acting cleaner. When your actions consistently echo your words, you project inner order. An inner order is deeply attractive because it signals reliability, self-command, and emotional safety. You feel this when you commit to something internally and follow through without announcement. No speeches, no justification, just action. Reminded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. There's power in that restraint. Consistency removes the need for persuasion. You stop trying to convince anyone of who you are. You let repetition do the talking. Over time, people don't listen to your words as claims. They hear them as confirmations of what they already sense. At a psychological level, consistency reduces uncertainty. The human mind is constantly scanning for patterns. When behavior is predictable in the best way, calm replaces doubt. You're not pulled in different directions by impulse. You don't say one thing and drift another way when it becomes inconvenient. This steadiness creates a feeling of groundedness, and groundedness is rare. Many people live fractured lives, torn between who they want to be seen as and who they actually are. Stoicism demands integration, one self, one direction, no performance. You may not realize how much energy is wasted trying to maintain an image. Stoics rejected this completely. Seneca warned, be what you wish to seem. Not eventually. Now, that's the discipline. When your words are modest and your actions are firm, you eliminate inner tension. You stop rehearsing explanations in your head. You stop adjusting your behavior to manage reactions. Consistency frees you. It simplifies your inner life. And when your inner life is simpler, your outer presence becomes calmer, more assured, more compelling. There's also something deeply reassuring about someone who doesn't contradict themselves over time. No emotional whiplash, no shifting standards, no sudden reversals driven by mood or approval. Stoicism trains you to act from principles rather than impulses. Principles don't change every day. When you live by them, your behavior develops a recognizable rhythm. Others may not consciously name it, but they feel it. It feels like stability, like maturity, like quiet strength. You don't need to be flawless to be consistent. Stoicism never asked for perfection. It asked for sincerity and effort. What matters is alignment, not theatrics. If you say you value discipline, your daily choices should reflect restraint. If you speak of calm, your reactions should lean toward composure. When your life supports your language, your words gain weight. They stop floating. They land. And psychologically, people are drawn to what feels solid. Now this requires honesty, brutal honesty. You must stop saying things you are not prepared to live. That's the first practice. Reduce your words until they match your capacity for action. Speak less but mean more. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice the order. Being comes before announcement, identity before expression. When you reverse this, you create tension. When you respect it, you create coherence. Another habit is delayed speech. Before you say something about yourself, wait. Ask whether your next actions will confirm it. If not, hold your tongue. Silence preserves integrity. Stoicism values restraint because restraint protects alignment. Every unnecessary promise is a future inconsistency waiting to happen. Every exaggerated claim creates pressure you don't need. Choose accuracy over impressiveness. Accuracy builds trust. Impressiveness fades. Consistency also shows up in small, repeated behaviors, not dramatic gestures, not rare moments of intensity, but the boring, unglamorous follow-through. Stoicism is built on this idea. Wrote extensively about doing the work in front of you without complaint, without seeking applause. When you train yourself to show up the same way regardless of mood, you cultivate reliability. Reliability becomes part of your presence. People relax around it. They lean into it. They respect it. There's a deeper psychological layer here. When your words and actions align, you experience less inner conflict, less self-criticism, less guilt. That internal peace subtly radiates outward. You become less reactive, less defensive, less eager to explain yourself. You don't feel the need to correct perceptions constantly because your life is doing that for you. Stoicism calls this living in accordance with nature. Not external nature, but your rational, principled self. To practice this deliberately, start with a simple exercise. Audit your language. Pay attention to what you say repeatedly. Strip away what you cannot support with action. Replace broad statements with quieter commitments you can honor daily. Another exercise, track follow-through, not to punish yourself but to build awareness. Notice where you drift. Adjust your words accordingly. Integrity is not rigid, it's responsive. You can also practice consistency under pressure. When emotions rise, your true alignment is tested. Stoicism prepares you for this. Pause. Ask yourself whether your reaction matches your values. If it doesn't, wait. Silence buys you space. Action chosen from space is almost always more consistent than action chosen from impulse. Over time, this discipline reshapes how you are perceived. You don't need to assert confidence. It's inferred. You don't need to signal reliability. It's expected. Your presence feels settled. And settled energy is attractive because it suggests that you know who you are and you're not negotiating it moment by moment. Remember, consistency is not about rigidity. It's about congruence. It's about living so that your inner compass and outer behavior point in the same direction. Stoicism teaches that when your life becomes an extension of your values, attraction is no longer something you chase. It becomes a byproduct, quiet, natural, unforced. So take this seriously. Tighten the space between what you say and what you do. Let your actions mature your words, not the other way around. Speak with intention, act with discipline, and trust this. When your life confirms your language, you won't need to announce anything. You'll be felt before you're understood. Number 9, comfort with silence. Comfort with silence is one of those traits that doesn't announce itself, yet it's felt immediately. You don't notice it because someone is doing something flashy. You notice it because they aren't doing what most people do. They're not rushing, not filling gaps, not scrambling to impress. And that absence of need speaks louder than any clever line ever could. Stoicism understood this long before modern psychology tried to name it. Wrote, "Be calm. Let your calm show you the way." Silence, when rooted in calm, becomes a signal. It tells the world that you are settled within yourself. and that inner settlement is deeply attractive. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence exposes them. When the noise stops, there's nothing to hide behind, no performance, no distraction, just presence, and presence requires confidence. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't beg for attention or approval. When you are comfortable in silence, you communicate that you don't need external stimulation to feel whole. You are not desperate for validation. You're not afraid of stillness. That alone sets you apart, because most people are running from their own thoughts. Stoicism teaches you that control begins inside. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Comfort with silence is part of that improvement. You stop trying to manage how you're perceived in every moment. You stop over-explaining yourself. You let pauses exist without rushing to repair them. Psychologically, this signals emotional regulation. It shows that you are not ruled by anxiety or impulse. You don't react just to relieve tension. You respond when there's something meaningful to offer. Silence also creates depth. Words are easy. Anyone can talk. Silence, on the other hand, requires grounding. When you're comfortable saying nothing, you allow moments to breathe. You allow emotions to settle. You allow curiosity to form. People instinctively lean toward what feels grounded and stable. Stoics believed that tranquility was strength, not weakness. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Filling silence unnecessarily is a form of premature suffering. It's you trying to escape discomfort instead of mastering it. When you practice comfort with silence, you stop chasing momentum. You stop trying to keep things going through constant stimulation. You trust that your presence alone is enough. That trust changes how you carry yourself. Your posture relaxes. Your tone softens. Your energy steadies. You don't rush your words because you're not afraid of being forgotten in the pause. You know that silence doesn't erase you. It amplifies you. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you don't rush to speak. Silence forces others to slow down too. It pulls them out of autopilot. It invites reflection. When you're not filling every gap, people project meaning onto your restraint. They sense intention even when you're simply being present. This isn't manipulation. It's natural human perception. We assign value to what is scarce, and silence is scarce in a world addicted to noise. Stoicism never encouraged muteness. This isn't about becoming distant or cold. It's about speaking with intention instead of compulsion. Reminded himself, do not be overheard complaining, not even to yourself. That discipline applies to unnecessary speech as well. Every word you don't waste preserves energy. Every pause you allow strengthens composure. Over time, your words carry more weight because they come from stillness, not restlessness. You might notice resistance at first. Your mind will urge you to fill the silence, to clarify, to entertain, to prove something. That urge is the habit you're here to break. Comfort with silence is a skill, and like all skills, it requires practice. Start by noticing how often you speak just to reduce tension, not to add value, just to escape discomfort. Awareness alone begins the transformation. One practical exercise is deliberate pausing. Before you speak, pause for a full breath. Let the moment settle. Ask yourself whether what you're about to say is necessary or merely reflexive. This pause trains self-command. Another exercise is restraint. Choose one interaction each day where you intentionally say less than you normally would, not in a withdrawn way, but in a grounded way. Speak clearly when needed, then stop. Let silence do the rest. You can also practice silence internally. Spend time each day without stimulation. No talking, no scrolling, just observation. Stoics believe that clarity comes from stillness. Seneca often warned about a mind constantly distracted by external noise. When you become comfortable with quiet internally, external silence stops feeling awkward. It starts to feel natural, even nourishing. There's power in not rushing to respond emotionally. When you feel triggered, silence buys you space, space to choose virtue over impulse. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb us but our judgments about them." Silence interrupts those judgments. It gives you a moment to regain command, and that command is felt by others, even if they can't articulate why. Over time, comfort with silence reshapes your identity. You stop performing. You stop seeking approval through words. You stop equating talkativeness with value. Instead, you develop quiet certainty, a sense of being anchored. You don't need to dominate conversations to be noticed. You don't need constant engagement to feel relevant. You trust your presence. This trust changes attraction dynamics at a fundamental level. People are drawn to those who seem at ease with themselves, who don't fidget verbally, who don't chase reactions. Silence becomes a signal of abundance, of inner fullness, of self-respect. Stoicism calls this not indifference but freedom from being tossed around by impulses, and freedom is compelling. Remember, comfort with silence is not about withholding warmth. It's about removing neediness. You can be calm and attentive without being verbose. You can be engaged without overextending. Silence doesn't mean absence. It means control. It means you decide when and how you express yourself, rather than being pushed by discomfort. So train it. Sit with quiet. Let pauses exist. Speak when your words matter. Let go of the urge to fill every space. As wrote, "Know where you can go is more peaceful than your own soul." When you live from that place, silence stops being something you fear. It becomes something you carry with confidence, and that confidence is felt instantly. Number 10, unreactive, grounded masculinity. Unreactive, grounded masculinity is not loud, and it doesn't rush to announce itself. It's felt before it's understood. You sense it in the way a man holds still when the world pulls at him, in the way he doesn't flinch when tension appears. Stoicism has always pointed to this kind of strength. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That sentence alone explains why this quality is instantly attractive. When you are not controlled by impulses, moods, or external pressure, you radiate safety, certainty, and depth. You become someone who doesn't need to chase attention because attention naturally orients toward you. Most men are reactive without realizing it. They respond too quickly. They explain too much. They adjust themselves based on how they think they're being perceived. Stoicism teaches you to step out of that trap. Grounded masculinity begins the moment you stop letting every stimulus dictate your response. You pause, you breathe, you decide. That pause is everything. It communicates that you are centered within yourself, not outsourcing your emotional state to whatever happens around you. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And the man who reacts less, who chooses calm over chaos, signals a form of leadership that words can't replicate. Unreactive doesn't mean cold. It doesn't mean indifferent. It means regulated. It means your emotions don't spill out uncontrollably. You feel deeply, but you move deliberately. This balance is rare, and rarity creates attraction. When you stop reacting impulsively, you stop seeking approval through behavior. You're no longer performing. You're simply present. Presence is powerful because it cannot be faked for long. It comes from inner alignment. From knowing who you are, what you value, and what you will not be pulled into. Stoicism frames masculinity as discipline, not dominance. Seneca warned, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here isn't aggression, it's restraint. It takes courage to remain calm when your ego wants to defend itself. It takes strength to stay grounded when emotions rise, and that strength is visible even when nothing is said. When you don't overreact, you communicate that you trust yourself, and self-trust is contagious. People feel it. They relax around it. They lean into it. Grounded masculinity also means you are rooted in your body and your values, not in outcomes. You don't rush toward validation. You don't retreat at discomfort. You stay. You hold your ground internally. This creates a steady emotional rhythm that others instinctively tune into. Stoics believed in living in accordance with nature, and part of that is understanding that storms pass. When you embody this, you stop panicking during emotional shifts. You allow moments to unfold without forcing resolution. That patience reads as confidence. There's a psychological layer here that matters. Reactivity often signals insecurity. Calm signals abundance. When you don't chase reactions, when you don't mirror every emotional fluctuation, you create polarity. You become the anchor instead of the wave. This doesn't require manipulation or strategy. It requires self-regulation. It requires you to stop outsourcing your sense of worth to external responses. Reminded himself, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do. That mindset changes how you move through every interaction. Build this, you must train your nervous system. Grounded masculinity is embodied, not intellectual. Start by slowing down your reactions in small moments. When something triggers you, don't speak immediately. Take one full breath before responding. Feel your feet, feel your posture. This simple pause retrains your body to associate calm with control. Over time, this becomes automatic. Another exercise, practice lowering your internal urgency. Remind yourself, nothing needs to be solved right now. That sentence alone dissolves reactivity. You should also practice emotional containment, not suppression. There's a difference. Suppression is avoidance. Containment is choice. Write down what you feel instead of expressing it impulsively. Let the emotion move through you without broadcasting it. Seneca advised daily self-examination, asking himself where he had been ruled by impulse instead of reason. You can do the same. Each night, reflect briefly. Where did I react unnecessarily today? Where could I have stayed grounded? This isn't self-criticism. It's refinement. Another powerful habit is reducing your verbal output. Speak less, but with intention. When you don't rush to fill silence, your words gain weight. Epictetus said, "Let silence be your goal for the most part." Silence stabilizes you. It prevents emotional leakage. It also allows others to feel your presence without distraction. Over time, people associate your calm with authority. Not forced authority, but natural gravity. Grounded masculinity also means accepting discomfort without resistance. Stoicism trains you to endure internal friction without dramatizing it. You don't need to label every feeling or act on every urge. You let sensations rise and fall. This emotional endurance is deeply attractive because it signals maturity. It says you are not overwhelmed by intensity. You can hold it. And someone who can hold intensity without losing himself is someone others feel safe around. As you practice this, you'll notice a shift. You stop needing to win every moment. You stop explaining yourself into exhaustion. You stop reacting just to be seen. You begin to move from a place of inner stillness. And stillness, paradoxically, is dynamic. It draws attention because it contrasts with chaos. Wrote, "Know where you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." When you live from that place, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a pursuit. Remember, this is not about acting unbothered. It's about being regulated. It's about choosing your responses instead of being hijacked by them. When you embody unreactive, grounded masculinity, you stop chasing outcomes. You focus on character, and character is always felt before it's analyzed. So take this seriously. Train your pause, strengthen your calm, reduce your noise. Let your presence do the work your words used to try to do. You don't need to convince anyone of your masculinity. You need to embody it, quietly, consistently. And once you do, people will sense it instantly, long before you ever say a thing. Before you scroll to the next video, remember this. Attraction isn't about chasing approval, changing who you are, or memorizing tricks. It's about becoming the kind of man whose presence speaks before he ever opens his mouth. The men who create instant attraction don't beg for attention, they command it quietly. If this video shifted even one perspective for you, imagine what happens when you apply these principles consistently. How you walk into a room, how you speak, how you carry silence, how you respond instead of react. That's where real power is built. Most men will hear this and do nothing. A few will reflect, and a rare few will act. The question is, which one are you? If you want to be part of that rare group, rewatch this video, take one idea and live it this week. And if you found value here, like the video, subscribe and share it with someone who's ready to level up. Because once you understand why attraction happens, you stop chasing it, and it starts coming to you.